Party, the ones who are behind the initiative to cap Switzerland's population. I told him about the misconceptions I've encountered. It seems like there are people in Switzerland who are your voters and supporters who have quite a warped impression of what immigration is in Switzerland. Because actually, in reality, the vast majority of people are from the EU.
I think it is our task as politicians to present our facts, our arguments. So if the people have the sentiment that this growth is too fast, that they're losing their identity, that they're losing what they used to call home, then I think it's the task of the politicians to take these concerns of these citizens serious.
I wonder how much your party's communications are responsible for that sentiment, because I've seen some of the imagery that you've put out around this referendum. They're images which are very racialised. They tend to represent migrants as all being from outside of Europe, when in reality it's actually a very small minority who are from outside of Europe.
I'm sorry, but this is not true what you're here telling. It's not the reality. It's not a fact. Please show me those pictures that you're referring to, but it's not a fact.
I can show you.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is the photo that I was looking at. So this is from Instagram, put out by the SVP, and I get out a photo that's been posted by the Swiss People's Party on their Instagram. It's a street which looks kind of Swiss, full of South Asian men who look like migrant workers. The slogan at the top reads, "If you want Swiss jobs."
This is CBC Winnipeg. Here are the lineup tones in advance of the CBC Winnipeg weekday morning show.
She then escorted me out of the Parliament building. Swiss voters' last chance to vote in this referendum was on June the 14th. And hours after the polls closed, the final results are declared. The proposal to cap the population is voted down, with 55% of voters voting against the proposal. But this story is far from over. 45% of Swiss voters were in favour of the initiative. And this is part of a trend that reaches across Europe of anti-immigrant feeling and policies. Immigration has been a big part of Switzerland's 20th century rags to riches story. But in this small, wealthy country, as the population has grown and as immigration has repeatedly been at the centre of referendums and public debate, a fear of being overwhelmed by outsiders has also grown. A fear that something intangible about Swiss culture could be lost. This edition of Assignment was produced and presented by me, Josephine Casserly.
That was Assignment from the BBC.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. My name is Julie Buckingham, in for Marcy Marcusa today, and you're listening to Information Radio on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Welcome to Thursday morning. Kind of feels like a Monday after we had Canada Day, and the current temperature outside our studio here at Portage and Spence is 17 degrees. A calm weather day in the city of Winnipeg, some on and off showers and strong wind yesterday as we think about Manitobans in places like Dauphin and Swan River, the Parkland, and many other areas that have been dealing with flooding, over 30 local states of emergency. Let's say hello to the team. Abby Adeyemi is our senior tech and will be monitoring the weather for us this morning. Darren Morash is our YouTube producer. Sierra Sanders is the show's director this morning and is monitoring your commute. The show is on until 8:37, and let's kick things off by heading to our news center for your headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, around 200 campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. The province says as many as 50 roads have been washed out in and out of the park. A pair of friends and bandmates are waiting to hear when they can leave. Courtney Carmichael and Nikki St. Pierre arrived Sunday. They thought they'd just be there for 3 days. They've been told the roads may not be passable for another week, so we'll hear the latest. And parts of Swan River, as you mentioned, evacuated yesterday, and the province also saw Dauphin close its hospital, evacuating that hospital as the river spilled its banks in Dauphin. Here in Winnipeg, a crash has closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips this morning. We'll tell you about that in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you so much, Heather. Heather Wells, of course, will be with us throughout the morning, keeping us up to date and informed. And an international tennis tournament is underway in Manitoba. We will learn more about that as our program continues this morning. Thank you for being here, and be sure to come back and stay with us after World Report. We'll also have an opportunity to talk about the July 1st deadline for CUSMA, and we'll be chatting with the Premier of Manitoba after 8 o'clock this morning. Once again, I'm Julie Buckingham in for Marcy Marcusa. We're back after World Report.
Q.
I love being Inuk. I love being from Nunavut. I'm so proud to tell this story.
The actor Anna Lamb from the show North of North was in school for international development in Ottawa. She wanted to make a difference in the world, in particular where she's from, in the North. But the roles kept coming, and she'll tell you how she learned that acting is actually one of the most powerful ways to make change. Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The East Coast is experiencing the same weather system that brought the heat wave to parts of Ontario and Quebec. Environment Canada has expanded its heat warnings across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI. The dangerous system is still punishing central Canada. Montreal is tracking a high of 33 degrees with the humidex pushing 45. And that same unstable weather triggered severe thunderstorms. Tens of thousands of customers are without power this morning. Strong winds and heavy rain forced the cancellation of several Canada Day celebrations, including the main fireworks on Parliament Hill. Environment Canada says roughly 110 millimeters of rain fell at the Ottawa airport. A flight carrying Prime Minister Mark Carney was grounded. He missed his speaking event in Edmonton. Thousands of Manitobans are being told to stay home and stay off the roads. Rising floodwaters have washed away roads and cut off communities. As the CBC's Ian Fraze reports, the water is leaving some people stranded.
You go camping to go off the grid a little bit, but you're just not expecting to have no means of getting out.
Courtney Carmichael is trapped at a provincial park in west central Manitoba. Heavy rains and rushing waters cutting off all 4 roads out of the park. Nikki St. Pierre says campers who tried to leave were turned around.
You have a bridge that is something like 20 feet underwater, it's 50 feet wide now, which was once a road.
Since Monday, some areas of the Parkland region have been drenched by as much as 200 millimeters of rain. The flooding turned streets in the city of Dauphin into rivers. It forced the city's hospital and 150 homes in Swan River to be evacuated. Premier Wab Kinew is asking everyone in the region to stay off the roads, even if they seem passable.
We have seen some very, very nasty situations where people have passed roadblocks and the vehicles are just completely damaged.
Kinew says they're planning contingencies for people needing food and supplies. He says anyone needing emergency care will be reached.
And we will come get you by helicopter, by boat, by whichever means of conveyance is necessary.
This is the second major flood to hammer the region in less than a month. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Emergency services in Pemberton, BC are on alert today. They're monitoring water levels from a glacial lake outburst. The Place Glacier started overflowing on Tuesday. The floodwaters could peak today. The CBC's Caroline Bargout reports that communities downstream are getting ready for a surge.
We've done everything we can do, so it's just a matter of waiting.
For weeks, Don Coggins and his neighbors have been on edge, told a nearby glacial lake will burst, sending as much as 30 meters of floodwaters their way. That rupture has now started.
It is a relief. Now it's started. At least we can deal with whatever comes our way instead of just sitting here and waiting.
24 properties northeast of Pemberton, BC are on evacuation orders, including Coggins. He set up flood bladders around his home, which are similar to sandbags, and is planning to stay put to make sure he can protect his property.
When it lets go completely, then it will be a flood, no matter what we do. Just a question of how deep it's going to get, that's all.
Brian Menounis is a geography professor at the University of Northern British Columbia.
In a similar way to previous floods and floods in other areas of the world, they start slowly. And as the channel beneath the glacier starts to get larger, it can accommodate more water. It's really in the best interest to keep everyone safe. And I think that's really what authorities are trying to do here.
The glacial lake has burst twice before, in 2024 and 2025. No homes were flooded. An embankment was strengthened this year to keep floodwaters in Pool Creek.
Nobody knows what to expect.
Don Coggins fears that will only divert floodwaters his way. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Vancouver.
Russia has carried out overnight attacks on Kyiv. At least 17 people are dead and more than 90 others are injured. The CBC's Anna Cunningham is following the story.
Through the night, loud explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital Kyiv. Russian drones, ballistic missiles hitting in waves. Residential blocks set alight when missiles hit, damaged too to a biochemistry institute. Among the injured were paramedics when one strike hit their ambulance station. Alexander Maretsko was in Kyiv. He is the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Ukrainian Parliament.
Last night it was an unusually loud night.
He believes Russia is using new, more powerful weapons and drones.
They're experimenting with killing our civilian population.
By daylight, rescue workers have been clambering on top of what was a 9-story apartment block, trying to reach those trapped inside. One video from Ukraine's ambulance service, verified by Reuters, shows teams inside the smashed concrete of one apartment, pulling a survivor out on a stretcher as teams elsewhere use cutters to break the debris. Russia's defense ministry says it hit what it called key military plants. The Kremlin says Moscow will continue to increase pressure on Ukraine in order to achieve its goals. Ukraine had been expecting Russia to retaliate for its recent long-range strikes within Russia. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again appealed to the US to move forward with licenses for Patriot missiles and weapons systems, saying these are the steps that can stop this war. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Today marks exactly 1,000 days since the October 7th attacks. Gatherings are taking place across Israel to remember the victims. The assault triggered a multi-front war that continues today. As the CBC's Crystal Gomansing reports, many survivors say they are still dealing with trauma and a growing distrust of the government.
It's been too long, too many dead.
Nufar Benzur wears an orange prison jumpsuit, posing for pictures by a fountain in a small plaza with a friend also dressed in orange, but wearing a mask of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Benzur and others, like Mia Kaplan, chanting into a megaphone near the Prime Minister's residence, wants Netanyahu held responsible for his actions. Not just the corruption charges he's on trial for, but the actions Kaplan says that have damaged the state of Israel and its people.
And Israel is in its worst point ever, geopolitically, financially, also security-wise.
Netanyahu was in charge on October 7th when Hamas led a surprise assault, resulting in the single deadliest day for Jewish people since the Holocaust.
We have lost so many of our people. People in Gaza, people in Syria, people in Lebanon, people in Iran have also suffered.
While ceasefires have suppressed military operations on several fronts, no peace has been declared. As recently as Tuesday, while visiting troops in southern Lebanon, Netanyahu said they're removing all threats against Israel's existence, instructing soldiers not to wait, to act against any threats. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
An expedition is leaving today to get the first glimpse of a historic shipwreck off Canada's east coast. The Royal Canadian Geographical Society is heading to the site of polar explorer Ernest Shackleton's last ship. Peter Cowan has more from Woods Hole, Massachusetts.
Crews are getting the ship Atlantis ready to head north to Canadian waters. On board is Alvin, the submersible that was made famous when it took the first people down to see the Titanic. Now it'll descend almost 400 meters to get the first glimpse of explorer Ernest Shackleton's last ship, Quest.
I'm very excited to see the name.
John Geiger is head of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. This is the biggest expedition it's ever mounted. He wants to see the ship where Shackleton died while exploring Antarctica. It later worked as a sealing ship when it sunk off the coast of Labrador. For decades, it sat undiscovered. 2 years ago, the Society found its exact location, but only captured a sonar image.
Can't really get a sense of the vessel and its condition from the sonar. So this is a chance to, deal with this unfinished business, to go back and see the vessel close up.
Canadian technology will be key to this expedition. Sensors from Waterloo-based Voyus will create what they call a digital twin, a 3D copy of the wreck. Brendan St. John with the company says it will be challenging work.
The Labrador Sea, like you said, is quite treacherous. It's not the easiest place to do work in, especially with a robotic platform that can get pushed around.
The mission will also dive down to explore Robert Falcon Scott's ship, the Terra Nova, just off Greenland. CBC News is on board the Atlantis with exclusive access, telling the Canadian ties to the age of heroic exploration. Peter Cowan, CBC News, Woods Hole, Massachusetts.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Buckingham in for Marcy Marcusa today. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM. And of course on the app and YouTube. Welcome to a Thursday morning that kind of feels like a Monday morning. Outside our studios here at Portage and Spence, it is 16 degrees. Abby will run through your full forecast in just a moment. This hour on the show, if you're in the market for a new computer, I hope you saved up a little extra. We will hear from an expert who says major price hikes are here to stay as AI data centers drive up the price for computer chips. We'll also take you later in the show, hopefully to the Parkland region as they are dealing with massive amounts of flooding. And let's talk tennis, shall we? Of course, many of us have been watching Wimbledon, but there's a big international tournament here as well. More on that just ahead. Let's go over to our news center now. That's where we find Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, parts of Swan River had to be evacuated yesterday due to rapidly rising floodwater. The province has asked the federal government for military help. In Dauphin, the hospital had to be evacuated after the Vermilion River spilled its banks. Around 60 patients were moved to other hospitals, including Brandon. A couple hundred campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park, waiting to find out when they can go home. We're going to hear from a couple of them. The province says it is working to restore power and road access. And that twister that tore through the Rossburn area on Sunday was stronger than first estimated. Environment and Climate Change Canada now says it has been upgraded to an EF3, maximum wind speed, 230 kilometers an hour. That is one fast, strong wind. We'll have more on all of these stories coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Yes, it is a story when news and weather collides often, and that is continuing to be the case.
Big collision.
Yes, absolutely, Heather. And we appreciate your work on all of this and bringing us up to date on that. Of course, Heather will be back throughout the morning. Abby Adeyemi has been checking the forecast, and he brings us a look at what you can expect no matter where you are in this province.
Yeah, no matter where you are, after the speed we saw yesterday from those tornadoes, we are looking at more of a calmer day today. We're going to see more like I'll call it the south, we'll see probably light rain and mild humidity, while up north, we're already seeing sunny conditions in most of the regions up north, but some areas still sporting those smoky conditions due to the wildfires in some areas. Here in the Red River Valley region, we're expecting more clouds to build. The sun really struggling to make its way through those cloudy conditions we have outside at this time. It's going to get windy at some point. Current temperatures, we're looking at 14 and 16 degrees depending on where you are in the city, and we're heading to a humid high of 23 today. Across the south, from the Pembina Valley region to the Westman Parkland Interlake region, temperature sits in between 13 and 16, also aiming for highs close to 25, while up north, the powerful influence Thompson Churchill, we're seeing clear skies to sunny conditions, temperatures ranging from 6 to 13 degrees, and highs in that part of the province would clock close to 22 today. But for Winnipeg right now, let's just put it at 15, and we get to 23 later in the afternoon.
All right. Thanks so much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders is here, our show's director, and also monitoring our commute this morning, and there's already been some hiccups.
I mean, yeah, it really depends where you are in the province right now, Julie. Here in the city, here in Winnipeg, not hearing about any major backups so far, but I will obviously keep an eye out for that and keep my ears on the CBC commuter line. But we are seeing quite a bit of highway closures in the northwest part of the province, specifically in that Duck Mountain Provincial Park area there. Lots of highway closures. Honestly, there's too many to list, actually. I would love to list them all for you, but I think we'd be here until the news, actually. So
might be easier to list the ones that are open.
That are open.
It is a significant list.
It is a very large list. Heather Wells did send an updated list this morning, and I looked through it, and I was like, oh my goodness, those are a lot of road closures. So we are seeing most of those highway closures in that northwest part of the province, the Duck Mountain Provincial Park area. So I would recommend, if you are heading out on the highways and maybe into that area, that Parkland area, check Manitoba 511 to see what highways are open and what are closed, because you will need to be aware of that. And that is due to the flooding conditions. We are seeing highways that are being washed out due to these waters and this rain. And it just sounds like everything happening at once, honestly. So would recommend checking Manitoba 511 if you are planning on heading out on the highways today. But if there's something that you see, or you want to give me an update about what you're seeing in your community, whether you are here in Winnipeg or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to hear about it. So give me a call. The number's 204-788-3093.
15 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning, and thank you for being here. Marcy Marcusa is off today. I'm Julie Buckingham. The Masters 100 International Tennis Federation tournament is underway for the first time ever in our province. Experienced players from around the world are on the court at West St. Paul at the National Bank Tennis Manitoba Hub. The event getting underway yesterday and running through until the 5th. Joining us now is Steve Dreger. He is the Executive Director of Tennis Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Most pleased to do so. And how was day one?
Oh, wow. Day one was extremely exciting. We had an awesome day at the National Bank West St. Paul Hub, which is one of the Tennis Manitoba facilities. And this was a great first day of the tournament. Everything went perfectly with weather. We just had a short rain delay, but it was an excellent day. We have 62 players in the tournament, and everyone has had a great time so far. There's been some great action on court and a lot of fun things for the players and spectators off court as well. So it's been an excellent start to the tournament.
What was your favorite part of the day?
Well, we had a players lunch. So one of our sponsors, Yip Stringing, provided a lunch for all the players. So we have a nice social tent set up, and we had some pizza and drinks for everybody. And it was a great chance for everybody to get to know each other off court, which is a really big part of this tournament. So it's when you're playing from July 1st to 5th, you get to know the people at the tournament really well, and it's just a great environment, and everyone's having a good time.
How does it feel to bring the event here?
This is a really great event for Tennis Manitoba and Tennis Canada. We work in partnership with Tennis Canada and the International Tennis Federation MT100 Winnipeg. As you said, this is our first time having the event here. We're hoping to host it again. And, it's a great opportunity for our tennis community here in Manitoba to host people from across Canada and across, from other countries to come here to Manitoba, to West St. Paul, and play at our beautiful facilities. If you've not been to our facilities and you are a tennis fan here in Manitoba or supporter, you're welcome to come out during our tournament, July 1st to 5th, and watch the tennis action. And we also have programs that at our facilities, West St. Paul and Deer Lodge, where we offer lessons and different programs as well. So please, if you're interested in playing tennis or watching tennis, just go to our website, Tennis Manitoba, and you can find information there.
Tell us a little bit about who is participating in the tournament.
Yes, so we have players representing different countries. There's a Chilean representation, Colombian, but our athletes are coming mainly from across Canada, representing different countries though. So we have players traveling in from Toronto, BC. Our head official is from Toronto. And then we do have a great local representation as well. So it's a really great event for people meeting each other for the first time, but also some good friends here from our local Tennis Manitoba community getting together for the tournament.
There's a lot of Canadian players that are really making a name for themselves on the world stage in tennis, and we're seeing some of them compete in action at Wimbledon, for example. How would you describe the tennis community here in Manitoba?
Yes, we have an incredible community. Our community is, we have the juniors tournaments, and our juniors tennis community is very strong. We have some excellent juniors tournaments. We actually have our provincial championship happening this weekend at our Tennis Manitoba Deer Lodge hub on Ness Avenue. But then we have some excellent clubs here in Manitoba, and our community that participate with the tennis clubs here. They also are great. Our tennis clubs are amazing. We have some great tennis coaches here, as well as some players, and there's always nice events to attend here in Manitoba. If it's a tournament at a club or a Tennis Manitoba tournament, there's always something to find and something to participate in.
What kind of impact do you think this event will leave in the community?
Yeah, I hope that it opens up eyes to tennis here in Manitoba for people that are interested in learning about the Masters Tour. So the Masters Tour is for athletes that are 30 or older. We have the 40s division, the 50s division, 60s division, 70s, and 80s. So tennis is a lifelong sport, and if you're looking for a great community to be a part of, Tennis Manitoba, we definitely are a great place for you to come find a new sport, or if you've played tennis and you want to start playing in tournaments, we definitely encourage you to join us. The Masters Tour is an excellent way to keep playing tennis, and so we really hope to find new people to join Tennis Manitoba events and just keep this MT100 Winnipeg happening, hopefully on an annual basis.
Congratulations on the event. Continued success over the next coming days. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me on. And like I said, we hope people come out and watch tennis at West St. Paul, 48 Holland Road, and it's some great action, and it's free admission. So please come on out.
Steve Dreger is the Executive Director of Tennis Manitoba. The Masters 100 International Tennis Federation Tournament, once again at the West St. Paul National Bank Tennis Manitoba Hub until July 5th.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
23 minutes after 6 o'clock, it is 16 degrees at Portage and Spence, 14 degrees at Winnipeg's airport. Your next computer or video game console is likely going to be more expensive. That's because the bits and bytes and components behind them are in high demand due to AI data centers. Here with more on this is Gary Hilson, a freelance tech writer and contributing editor of the EE Times. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, what kinds of consumer tech are we talking about here that could be most affected by these increased prices?
Well, you're looking at everything from laptops to smartphones to tablets and even gaming consoles, because they all use the same memory chip that's really popular for data centers, and that's DRAM.
Okay, so how much of a price hike are we talking about maybe on a cell phone versus a computer?
Well, you're looking at about a 15 to 20% increase on any item. So say an $800 laptop, that you'd probably add another $120 to that laptop. And it could vary too, depending on what you're buying the laptop for. If you're a high-end gamer, you're going to want the fastest memory, so it's going to cost you more. The highest-end smartphone that has AI capability is going to cost more, say, to a mid-range. So it'll depend on the device and its use. But yeah, you're looking about $100 increase at least on the typical item.
Wow, that's pretty significant, especially we're always told about getting the latest and greatest cell phone. I think I'll be keeping mine for a little bit longer. So what's causing the spikes then?
Well, DRAM is the most commonly used computer memory, and it's very useful for AI data centers. And you've probably heard about the growth in AI and even some resistance and controversies over these AI data centers being built, but they're going up pretty quickly. And DRAM is used in a lot of different ways, but when it comes to the data center, it's stacked to make high bandwidth memory, and that makes this allows these high performance accelerators to run all these AI workloads, in training and machine learning. So that's where the business is. And there's only three major memory makers in the world that make most of the DRAM, about 90% of it. And they see a demand to put this in HBM, and that HBM is being bought up. In fact, one company has sold out of all their HBM for 2026 because all the big companies like Facebook and Amazon are buying up HBM memory for data centers. So unfortunately, that means it's a supply and demand. There's only so much DRAM being made, which means there's less for the consumer devices.
So why not just make more? It seems simple. if there's none on the shelf, you make more.
And they do ramp up manufacturing to a point. So the memory industry is like any industry where it's subject to booms and bust cycles. So they can ramp up their production. And the challenge for them is that they don't want to get into another bust cycle where they're left over with an oversupply, because then the prices really go down. And that's been the cycle for years, like many other industries, where you get these booms and you get these busts. It also costs a lot of money in the same way it costs a lot of money and skills to build up a data center, it costs money to build facilities. It's a big capital investment to build facilities to make the latest and greatest memory, because the memory evolves and gets better, which means the equipment to make it has to evolve and get better. So it's similar to, you know, spinning up an auto parts company or automotive factoring. It's a pretty big deal. So there's a big opportunity, but these companies are also reluctant to over provision or overbuild and end up stuck with oversupply and have another bust.
Can we expect to see the prices go down anytime soon?
Not any, I don't know. I wouldn't begin to predict. The general consensus with AI right now is no one can really predict where this is going. There's a lot of talk about how AI is going to replace all these jobs. And then there's other stories at the other side saying, well, we bought all this AI, and it's not really doing anything for us. And I think anyone who can tell you where this is going to go in the short term, they're just guessing. I think there's going to be a slowdown. There is resistance to all these data centers being built, which will slow down construction. And hopefully things will adjust and everyone can catch their breath, and we'll see more of a balancing out of demand for the memory, and hopefully prices will at least flatten.
We've got about less than a minute remaining. So we know laptops, phones, game consoles use chips, but they're also in cars, fridges. Everything gets smarter. So is this going to affect our appliances and what we drive to?
Well, the definitely automotive, the cars are getting very smart. Self-driving cars need computing power. They're a computer on wheels. So the more complex the device, the smarter the memory, the more performance it needs. So those prices will go up. If they just have simple functionality, it probably won't have as big an increase. It's not like we have talking fridges yet. It's basic functionality and appliances. But definitely the smarter the devices become, the more computing chips come in, and then they are all just like every other industry. The memory makers have to deal with fuel cost increases and other supply chain issues that affect their costs. So,
well, I would love it if my fridge could tell me that I was out of milk. But until then, I appreciate your time and filling us in on this.
Have a great day.
You as well. Gary Hilson is a freelance tech writer and contributing editor of the EE Times. We will take you to the Parkland region. We will speak to Reeve Bilgade of the Swan Valley area, who will give us an update on all of that water in that area. And of course, we'll get the very latest on the news, which starts right now with Heather Wells.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 16 degrees. No mention of the word showers in today's forecast. Increasing clouds, though, a northwest breeze, and a high of 23. About 200 campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park with no idea when they can go home. Major flooding has caused more than 30 municipalities to issue states of emergencies. Courtney Carmichael and Nikki St. Pierre arrived at Charles Lake Campground in the park on Sunday. They thought it would be a 3-night stay, but now they don't know how to find a way out.
People around us have tried with trucks and side-by-sides to access back roads, and almost everybody we've spoken to have had to turn around.
There are only four entrances and exits in and out of the park, and they've all been destroyed.
Now, the province is urging people living in the Parkland region to stay off all roads as major overland flooding continues. Parts of Swan River were evacuated yesterday, as was the Dauphin Hospital. Premier Wab Kinew says dozens of provincial roads have been flooded and washed out. And even if the roads appear to be safe, that's not always the case.
We have seen many situations with vehicles just submerged in water and mud and all sorts of other impacts to infrastructure. So it's really about looking after people so that you can stay safe.
The province has asked the federal government for military assistance to help with response. The twister that barreled through the Rossburn area on Sunday was stronger than first thought. Environment Canada now says it has been upgraded from an initial EF2 to an EF3, and the estimated maximum wind speed, 230 kilometers an hour. That twister tore apart a century-old home near Rossburn, heavily damaging the rest of the farmyard. A house across the road was also damaged. No one was hurt. A pedestrian is in unstable condition after being hit by a vehicle around midnight. That crash has closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips. Northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame also impacted. Winnipeg police expect the closures to be in place through the morning rush. Growing calls for off-road vehicle users to take safety seriously after new data shows 8 people died in Manitoba riding off-road vehicles last year. None of those who died were wearing helmets or used a seatbelt if the vehicle was equipped with one. Dave Lee, president of the All-Terrain Vehicle Association of Manitoba, says young riders are particularly vulnerable in a collision.
It's a tragedy. It'll devastate a family if this happens. I've heard so many stories of tragedy strikes and the family is devastated. The family breaks down. Please protect your children.
Lee recommends all riders take a safety course. Manitoba had more than 200 hospitalizations last year for injuries from people riding off-road vehicles. RCMP issued 275 tickets for violations, including 50 for failing to wear a helmet. Chips, rotisserie chicken, and baked goods are now PST in Manitoba. The province's tax cut on store-bought food took effect yesterday. This cut applies to food sold at grocery and convenience stores. The NDP government says the change could save the average family $100 a year. Sahar Baidoun is a mother of 4. And although this cut helps, Baidoun says it's not enough.
I'm planning to make a party for my daughter because she graduated, but I cannot afford it. I can't. It's either I get groceries for the house for 2 weeks or make the party.
The province has also cut the PST from prenatal vitamins. Ukrainian officials say intense Russian attacks have killed at least 17 people in Kyiv. Loud explosions rocking the Ukrainian capital for hours overnight. Ukraine's Air Force says Russia hit about 75 missiles and 500 drones, widespread damage in dozens of locations. You can hear more on this story, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. All 3 countries hosting this year's World Cup will advance to the round of 16. Last night, the U.S. beat Bosnia 2-0 to secure a ticket to the next round. Canada's soccer team will play Morocco this Saturday in Houston. Coach Jesse Marsh isn't saying what role star captain Alphonso Davies will have.
We will be thinking about how to use Alphonso again in this game, whether from the start or off the bench.
Davies suffered a hamstring injury back in May and hasn't played much for Canada in this World Cup. A goaltender with playoff pedigree has joined the Winnipeg Jets. Stuart Skinner helped lead the Edmonton Oilers to the Stanley Cup final appearances in 2024 and 2025. The 27-year-old has signed a 2-year, $7.5 million contract on the first day of the NHL free agency yesterday. He says he joined the Jets because he admires their culture and hopes to grow his game under goalie coach Wade Flaherty. Skinner says how much he plays will be determined by how well he plays.
My expectation is to bring my absolute best game day in and day out, grab that consistency and run.
For now, Skinner fills an opening created by the departure of backup goalie Eric Comrie, who signed a 2-year deal with San Jose yesterday. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Well, we'd be remiss, Heather Wells, if we didn't mention that Stuart Skinner also talked about the fans and said it was a hard building to play in. And I believe his the overarching cheer that people would give him in Edmonton was like, Stu. So I guess we have to warm up our vocal cords for that.
You kind of got to get deep on that one.
Yeah, you do. I feel like you do. All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells at the CBC News Center. Abby Adeyemi has been checking your forecast. Still some precipitation lingering in some parts of this province.
Yes, and for those that are still trying to wrap their heads around the wind speed yesterday in western Manitoba, just picture a commercial airplane trying to take off. The takeoff speed is 240 kilometers per hour, between 240 and 290, and we saw a speed of 230 yesterday in the western part of the province. So that was really, really going to be blowing things really all over the place. That's the maximum speed of the wind of that tornado we saw yesterday in that part of the province. So it was I think it was something serious to really think about the people in that part of the province. But here today, it's more about cloudy conditions in most of the regions down south. We are already seeing temperatures in the 14s and the 16s. Winnipeg, we're hovering between 14 and 16 degrees at this time. Sunrise really trying to struggle behind those cloudy conditions we have. We only get to 23 today. Then you look at other southern part of the province. We're looking at Portage-la-Prairie. We're seeing 16 degrees there, aiming for a high of 25. Sunshine there in the Westman region, Brandon towards Nipawin. You're sitting at 13 at this time, enjoying some clear skies with an eastern breeze and a high of 23 also in the forecast. Then we go towards the Parkland region, Dauphin towards Roblin. We're seeing temperatures around 14, 15 degrees there, cloudy skies. You aim for 21 today. And in the Interlake region, Gimli and nearby, we're looking at 15 and cloudy skies, aiming for a high of 23 with the winds coming from the northwest. Then we travel into the central part of the province where we're seeing temperatures between 6 and 13, and of course a smoke still limiting the air quality in some areas. The Power Flim mainly sunny, 13 degrees there, reaching a high of 22. We have local smoke in that part of the province. Norway House mostly cloudy at 10 degrees, looking for an afternoon high of 21. We also have smoke in the air there. Then Thompson to Dooley Lake, currently sunny, 7 degrees, both tracking towards a high of 23 today with local smoke. In the Lane Lake area, we're also seeing sunny conditions, 8 degrees at this time, high of 23 with local smoke. The Gillam area, sunny, 6 degrees, a slim chance of showers, high of 20, while for the Churchill region, we see sunny conditions there, 8 degrees, and some breezy conditions will be coming your way soon, a high of 20 in that part of the province. So it's more about smoky conditions in most parts of the north, and we're seeing more like cloudy conditions, breezy south wind, breezy conditions in the south today. For the city, we're expecting more of cloud cover on and off, and we'll get windy spots. Current temperatures 16. We only get to 23 today.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank
Sierra
you.
Sanders is monitoring the traffic line and also our show's director. What are you learning?
So far, not hearing about too much going on out there. The commuter line has been pretty quiet so far because, as I think you mentioned, this is the most like Monday feeling Thursday.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have perhaps said, oh, Canada Day's on a Wednesday. I'm going to
taking
take
the rest of the week
Thursday and
off.
Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's maybe why I'm here today.
Yeah,
Who knows?
and me too, honestly. But again, so far not hearing about too many things. We did hear this in Heather's news, but I do want to remind folks that a pedestrian was hit by a vehicle around midnight last night, and the collision has closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips. So northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame is also impacted because of that, and the police, Winnipeg police, expect the closures will be in place through the morning rush. So whatever that morning rush looks like this morning, depending what traffic is looking like, you want to expect that there on your commute and maybe expect some delays through there. Other than that, not hearing about much. Again, quite a few highway closures in the northwest part of Manitoba, specifically in that Duck Mountain Provincial Park area. If you are planning to head out into that area or you are on the highways, I would recommend checking Manitoba 511 for a full list or for a full look at those closures, as there are quite a few closures, and if I tried to list them, we would be here for more than a couple of minutes. So I would recommend going and taking a look on Manitoba 511 for an up-to-date information there. Still here, if there is something on your drive, I would love to hear about it so I can let your other fellow commuters and listeners know. Give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That's 204-788-3093.
6:41 now, and Crystalie Ramlakan is here with the business report this morning. Good morning. And the U.S. declining to extend Canada's U.S.-Mexican trade agreement, or CUSMA, as many of us call it, in the current form. What does this mean for Canada?
Well, this triggers what are expected to be tough negotiations on amending the deal. So the U.S. announcement does not kill CUSMA, which does not actually expire until 2036. Yesterday was just the deadline for each country to declare whether they want to extend the agreement to 2042 or renegotiate its terms. And the U.S. move, of course, was widely anticipated. Mexico and Canada had said they wanted CUSMA extended and were willing to discuss amendments. And some analysts say blowing past this July 1st deadline doesn't mean much as long as there is dialogue. And that some within the Trump administration have said the U.S. still values the trade deal, and the president may just be negotiating in public to gain leverage. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc says the government will continue to do what's necessary to protect the economy from unjustified sectoral tariffs and
to make the case for the renewal of an agreement, the trilateral trade agreement that the Ambassador Greer, the United States Trade Representative, referred to publicly as the load-bearing walls of the U.S. economy. So he acknowledges that in our conversations, but they want to make bilateral deals with Canada and Mexico to deal with a number of issues, and we're prepared to have those conversations with them as well.
So the renewal process is likely to last months, maybe longer. The U.S. is making demands that could effectively force Canada and Mexico to surrender some factory production to the U.S. And that push would actually upend established automotive supply chains and would put upward pressure on U.S. prices for new cars.
It's not all fun and games at the field. Why are some World Cup fans suing StubHub?
Yes, so soccer fans are accusing the resale platform of failing to deliver expensive tickets they bought on the secondary market. So in a proposed class action lawsuit, fans claim they did not get what they paid for because StubHub never delivered their promised tickets. And fans have flooded social media during the tournament, blaming StubHub for last-minute ticket cancellations and for backing away from assurances they could get replacement tickets. And many ticket holders say they traveled long distances to watch matches, and ticket refunds offered little comfort because, well, they remained stuck with airfare and lodging costs. So StubHub has blamed FIFA's ticketing infrastructure for problems with ticket resales. Now, FIFA had urged fans to only use its own official resale platform, saying it was reliable. And this lawsuit seeks damages of at least $5 million for thousands of people in the U.S. who did not receive World Cup tickets that they bought through StubHub, and for alleged violations of various consumer protection and false advertising laws.
And is it the end of the era? We're used to putting the discs in that PlayStation to play a game, and is that it? No more tactile games?
Yeah, that's right. So Sony says it will stop releasing new video games for the PlayStation on disc in January 2028, following a shift in consumer preferences. So you still have a little bit of time, but the company says it is eventually going away. Now, following that date, new games will be available on the PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. So that means gamers will have to download directly from the PlayStation Store or obtain a download code when purchasing from a retailer. And the announcement comes as the upcoming digital-only release of the Grand Theft Auto 6 game, which is predicted to become the biggest-selling cultural product of all time, has caused some concerns among gamers as well. So there has been some grumbling on social media that the lack of a physical disc would eliminate any secondhand market for the title. And Sony began its move towards digital downloads in 2020 with the release of the latest console, PlayStation 5, which had a version without a disc drive. And the announcement also renews speculation about the next generation PlayStation 6 console and whether the PS6 will be digital only. And, this debate is also being had when it comes to like music and movies and stuff too, right? Now people don't own that media anymore physically. It's just on subscription sites, and those platforms can take away that content if they want. You won't always have access to it if they make a decision to get rid of it.
Interesting thought. I still think a lot of people have gone back to vinyl. So we do like to still feel and touch and own those things. Thank you for joining this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Crystalia Ramlakan is here with today's business report. 46 minutes after 6 o'clock, please leave immediately. That was the message to some residents of Swan River as flooding once again hitting the Parkland region. Some were told to leave their homes, and the province has requested federal government send the military as that flood water threatens road access. The town of Swan River in Westman issued that mandatory evacuation order Wednesday afternoon. Let's take you to that area of our province now, where the Reeve of the RM of Swan Valley West, Bill Gade, joins us live. Good morning.
Good morning.
Bill, I wish we were chatting under better circumstances, but once again, here we are. What is the situation in and around your part of the province and this community right now?
Well, the good news is at the particular moment, the river is not rising much more. We were hoping for a crest last night, and we almost got that. It has gone up a bit, but not very much. Fortunately, it's also been raining overnight. Not huge amounts, though, so that probably won't make a big difference to us. But the river is at least somewhat stable. We wait now for it to start to go down. Hopefully, it doesn't go up anymore. Damage-wise, 3 weeks ago, we had that massive flooding. It was horrible. This has been far worse. We have way more damage this time.
Do you feel confident you know where everyone is and what help they need right now?
I think we're fairly confident we know where the people are. Unfortunately, some of those answers are stuck in their homes again. We have a lot of people that can't leave home, can't go anywhere. And even as the valley itself, we're fairly cut off from the outside world right now until we reestablish some highway access. But we don't think we've had any losses of life, people-wise at least. We're fairly confident everybody is safe. But a lot of them are not in a great situation as far as not being able to go home or being home and not being able to leave.
So what do you need right now?
Well, probably the biggest thing for Swan River itself is the water to go down. We can't start fixing this until the water goes down. In Swan Valley West, a lot of our infrastructure, the water is down, so we can start fixing that. It's very difficult to do that while it's still raining. So we're hoping that lets up and we can actually get in and start putting some roads back in. When we did this 3 weeks ago, and it just seems so surreal to talk about the flood 3 weeks ago, and it actually being smaller because it was so big at the time, it took us 3 or 4 days to get access back to every home. We're expecting it'll be at least that long, if not longer this time. But we're getting kind of good at this, I guess. We know how we did it last time, so we just have to repeat it again.
What do you need in terms of resources from the provincial government and or the federal government?
We know what we're going to see is a lot of people, when we get back in these homes, not knowing what to do, not having the resources to try and save the home. If we can get in there in a day or two and get all of the bad materials out of the basement, and in some cases it's the first floor as well, if I strip that home out, we can save the structure itself so we can actually eventually repair it. So that's going to be very important to us. There's going to be massive amounts of volunteers needed for that. Or the other option at this point is, armed forces or something like that. The trouble I'm foreseeing is 3 weeks ago it was just us. It was just a small area of our municipality, a small area of the town of Swan River. This time it's all that area, plus probably 4 times, plus the entire western side of Manitoba. The damage extends all over the place. I haven't seen firsthand those other communities. I suspect we're probably the worst hit again, but it's bad everywhere.
What are your fears?
Well, everybody here now watching the sky, we said this was once in 150 years when we did it 3 weeks ago, and now it's actually worse than it was then. Some people are calling this once in a 3-week flood, and we certainly can't do it again 3 weeks from now.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of Manitobans are perhaps feeling helpless if they're not in that part of the province. And as you mentioned, you're not alone in this. We're seeing the flooding in Dauphin and many other parts of the province as well, particularly in and around the Parkland. What is your message to those of us that are not directly impacted who feel like they want to do something?
There's a lot of people asking that, and I'm not standing here saying, send us money. That's probably the only thing you can do today, and there's really no place for that money to go either. Money won't fix this right now. What will fix this is the weather starting to cooperate. We'll need massive amounts of help, but we can't even get people in right now. If the water was gone in a second from now, all the roads are destroyed, so we can't even get people here to help. And this, 3 weeks ago, we saw some really well-intentioned people that wanted to help, and in some cases made things worse. But there were lots of things that people could do as the cleanup started. So there'll be some rules for that, but it's just so early right now. There's not a lot of ways anyone can help us.
Well, we'll certainly look for those ways to help once it is an appropriate and safe time to do so. No doubt we'll be speaking again, and take good care to you and all of the residents in that region affected. And just know that the people of Winnipeg and the rest of the province are really thinking about them.
Thank you.
Bill Gade is the Reeve of the RM of Swan Valley West. Canada Day brought with it the long-awaited deadline for the Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to officially declare their intentions when it comes to CUSMA. Negotiators from Canada, the U.S., and Mexico met online to talk trade. The U.S. said no to renewing the deal for now. Here to talk about what this means for our country is Fen Hampson, co-chair of the expert group on Canada-U.S. relations, as also a professor of international affairs at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Thank you for doing this. And the U.S. opting out of renewing CUSMA yesterday. How worried should Canadians be about this?
Well, let's be clear about what happened and what didn't. The U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer announced that Washington is not going to agree to renew the USMCA or CUSMA in its current form. That is not the end of the agreement, not even close. Under the terms of the agreement, it stays fully in force until it expires in 2036. What the American decision, in effect, does is trigger what could be up to a decade of annual reviews. Instead of locking in the agreement, the three countries are now going to sit down every year to haggle over its provision. The deal survives, but certainty doesn't. So, there are two things that remain true. One is that an extension can be agreed at any time going forward. The American decision not to renew now can obviously be reversed. At the same time, any country can walk away from the agreement if it gives 6 months' notice. So the door to renewal is still open, but the exit door is the same one that's always been there in the agreement, and at any time, one of the three parties could walk away from that as well.
Did we hear anything new or unexpected from the U.S. yesterday?
Honestly, no. Donald Trump has been saying for months he wasn't sure that he was going to renew the agreement. He's also said he'd rather not have an agreement. Raining on our Canada Day celebrations was disappointing, but it wasn't a big surprise.
What concessions is the Trump administration looking for from Canada specifically?
Well, there's a pretty long laundry list that the U.S. Trade Representative tabled back in December. We know what they want. There are more than a dozen items on that list. It includes greater access to our dairy market, an end to what they call a loophole on Canadian dairy protein exports, scrapping or gutting our proposed legislation, Online Streaming Act, the Online News Act, which they say discriminates against big American technology and media giants, ending those very controversial provincial bans on U.S. alcohol. They also want tighter rules of origin, higher American content in cars that are assembled in both Canada and Mexico, 50% American content in those vehicles. But what's missing from the list is anything for Canada. I mean, Canada, the Americans, I should say, wanted us to make major concessions before formal negotiations even began. And why on earth would we give anything away without getting something in return, starting with those very punitive tariffs that Donald Trump has levied on our steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber exports to the U.S.?
We have a minute remaining. It seems like the U.S. is been dragging its heels in terms of negotiations here. So if this status quo continues for a long time, what kind of impact could that have?
Well, I think the honest answer is that we're going to be in a continuous negotiation with the Americans for the rest of the Trump presidency. Anything that we do sign, for that matter, if we end up signing a set of essentially side agreements or letters of agreement to satisfy some of his demands. He's going to come back for more. The Europeans, the Japanese, the Koreans, they all signed agreements with this administration, and they've watched new tariffs land on them, new demands. The problem with Donald Trump and his administration is that Trump's word is not his bond. And so what that really means is we have to get serious about reducing our trade dependence on the United States, as the Prime Minister is trying to do, to diversify our markets, sell our energy, food, and minerals to a world that wants them. At the same time, knock down our own internal trade barriers here in Canada. And that will give us leverage in any negotiation going forward.
Have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Fen Hampson, co-chair of the expert group on Canada-U.S. relations and a prof of international affairs at Carleton University. Well, still to come later this morning. Have you ever had a medical question, but you were just too shy to ask? Have no fear. Unfiltered children are here. The house doctor will get asked and will answer some of those questions for you. We are still looking at the weather forecast, and our traffic will continue to keep you up to date on that. Let's check in with Heather Wells for headlines.
Well, about 200 campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. The province says as many as 50 roads have been washed out by this week's flooding. And growing calls for off-road vehicle users to take safety seriously after new data shows 8 people died in Manitoba riding off-road vehicles last year. More at 7:30.
Thank you so much, Heather. Heather Wells at the CBC local news desk. We'll also find out how Selkirk is planning to rewild their community. Lots still to come. Of course, the Premier will join us as well as we continue to talk about the flood situation in the parkland. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after World Report. Stay here.
On the Current. I'm Pia Chattopadhyay. People are taking up sewing, making their own clothes, and taking pride in saying, thanks, I made it myself.
I had no idea that people were sewing their own clothes before I started.
We'll look at the trend and the pushback against fast fashion and overconsumption. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith will reveal new details today about her plan to get a pipeline going west. But proposals is hitting a major roadblock. The project does not have a private backer, and there are other issues. Joining us now from Ottawa is the CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian. Rafi, what are we expecting to hear from the Premier this morning?
So she's going to come out and tell Canadians what she's got for a new pipeline to the West Coast. Now, that plan is for public consumption, but perhaps more importantly, also for the government to hear. The federal government would have until October 1st to decide whether or not this project fits into what it calls the national interest. A thumbs up on that means the project gets fast-tracked through Ottawa's major projects office to begin actual construction. But there are still a couple of unknowns in all of this. For months, Alberta has not had a private sector champion for the pipeline. I'm not sure we'll hear of a proponent like that today. We also still don't know the actual route this project will take. CBC did obtain some documents through Access to Information that show 3 potential routes would send the pipeline to BC's north coast, where there is a federal oil tanker moratorium in place. It's also worth noting that just 18 days after Ottawa is supposed to make a call on the project in October, Albertans go to the polls to answer that referendum question on whether or not the province should stay part of Canada or have an eventual vote on secession. We've already blown past some deadlines in this whole process, though. Alberta was supposed to present its plan by yesterday and then said because of Canada Day, it was delaying that by a day.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with BC Premier David Eby today. What can we expect from their meeting?
Well, I'll be very curious to see what comes out of it. It could well be that we'll see some fireworks. There's been some unhappiness in British Columbia over the prospect of a new pipeline going through its jurisdiction. So whatever is announced with Eby today may be Carney's attempt at placating that anger on a day where all eyes and ears will be on the pipeline and what Smith has to say.
All right. Thank you, Rafi.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian joining us from Ottawa. Emergency services in Pemberton, BC are on alert. They are monitoring water levels from a glacial lake outburst. The Place Glacier started overflowing on Tuesday. The floodwaters could peak today. As CBC's Caroline Bargut reports, communities downstream are getting ready for a surge.
We've done everything we can do, so it's just a matter of waiting.
For weeks, Don Coggins and his neighbors have been on edge, told a nearby glacial lake will burst, sending as much as 30 meters of floodwaters their way. That rupture has now started.
It is a relief. Now it's started. At least we can deal with whatever comes our way instead of just sitting here and waiting.
24 properties northeast of Pemberton, BC are on evacuation orders, including Coggins. He set up flood bladders around his home, which are similar to sandbags, and is planning to stay put to make sure he can protect his property.
When it lets go completely, then it will be a flood, no matter what we do. Just a question of how deep it's going to get, that's all.
Brian Menounis is a geography professor at the University of Northern British Columbia.
In a similar way to previous floods and floods in other areas of the world, they start slowly. And as the channel beneath the glacier starts to get larger, it can accommodate more water. It's really in the best interest to keep everyone safe. And I think that's really what authorities are trying to do here.
The glacial lake has burst twice before in 2024 and 2025. No homes were flooded. An embankment was strengthened this year to keep floodwaters in Pool Creek.
Nobody knows what to expect.
Don Coggins fears that will only divert floodwaters his way. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Vancouver.
At least 18 people are dead after overnight strikes on Ukraine's capital. Paramedics lift a man onto a stretcher outside a residential building in Kyiv. It has partially collapsed, and people are believed to be trapped inside. It is one of more than 20 sites hit by Russian drone and missile strikes. Ukraine's president says more than 90 people have been injured. This man lives in Kyiv.
It was terrible. We were at home when reports came in that the ballistic missiles were heading towards the city, so we rushed into the hallway to get to the shelter. But it was already too late. There was one strike, then another, then the blast blew our front door out. My wife and I grabbed our cat and dog and went outside to see what had happened.
Fires could be seen burning across Ukraine's capital. Officials say the number of dead will likely rise. Iran's military issued a warning to oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. It says vessels must follow Iranian-approved routes or face a forceful response. The warning follows indirect U.S. and Iranian talks in Qatar yesterday. The dispute centers on a 60-day agreement allowing ships to pass without paying fees. Iran wants to control routes and charge fees, but the U.S. and Gulf Arab states refuse. Negotiations are paused until after the funeral of Iran's state supreme leader. Ceremonies begin July 4th. Nearly 2,300 people are now confirmed dead after the twin earthquakes in Venezuela. Doctors are warning of a growing medical crisis for survivors. Thousands of people are living in crowded shelters. Many have untreated wounds and no clean water. CBC's Jorge Barrera is in La Guaira with more.
A priest gives last rites, standing atop the shattered remains of 9 apartment towers in a neighborhood in the eastern part of the state of La Guaira, emerging as the hardest hit area in Venezuela following last week's twin earthquakes. This looks like a war zone, says Sabrina Carazo, who survived along with her mother. Her 4 brothers and grandmother remain buried. She says 2,700 people lived here, and a little over 100 bodies have so far been dug out. The total killed, unknown. Canopies dot this undulating landscape where local residents, with little help from authorities, have dug their own tunnels to retrieve their loved ones.
Where's maybe the child?
This translator directs a search and rescue team from the Netherlands for a father whose two sons, aged 8 and 13, died in their bedroom.
Yes? Okay. About a few hours. We help
As the team gets to work, frustration swirls around them.
El pueblo, le digo todo el pueblo, rebélense.
The people need to rebel, says Armando Urbina. Only the connected and the wealthy are getting any government help. Not so, says Prison Minister Julio Garcia Serpa, charged with overseeing a large tent city for the displaced. This tragedy outstrips the capacity of any state to respond, he says. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, La Guaira, Venezuela.
Papua separatists claim they have shot and killed an American pilot and burned his aircraft in Indonesia. The rebel group says it targeted Nicholas Gosselin. His civilian plane was used to transport Indonesian troops into a conflict zone. Officials have not yet verified the claims. The Vatican has formally excommunicated a breakaway Catholic group after it defied Pope Leo. The Traditionalist Society of St. Pius X went against the pontiff and ordained new bishops without his approval. The church's decision goes further than expected and marks the first major confrontation of Leo's papacy. Megan Williams has the details from Rome.
The Vatican isn't just punishing the bishops who took part. It says the entire Society of St. Pius X, known as the SSPX, is now in schism, a severe rupture. That means its priests and formal followers are considered cut off from the wider Catholic Church and excommunicated. The move comes after the Swiss-based ultra-traditionalist society consecrated 4 new bishops this week without Pope Leo's approval. Pope Francis had been severe with traditionalists, especially over the Old Latin Mass.
Some people have hoped that Leo would undo some of that. It might be easier for him to do that now that he's been tough on the SSPX. Says
Vatican observer Francis X. Rocca. Under church law, only the Pope can authorize new bishops because bishops are seen as successors to Jesus' apostles. The Vatican says SSPX priests now celebrate the sacraments illicitly and cannot validly officiate marriages or hear confessions. The group has long rejected key reforms of the 1960s Second Vatican Council, particularly reforms that opened the door to Mass in local languages and improved ties with Jews and other Christian denominations. The SSPX says it needed new bishops to keep leading its worldwide movement. For now, Leo is drawing a hard line. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning to you. I'm Julie Buckingham in for Marcy Marcusa today. You are with Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, and of course, on YouTube. Welcome to Thursday morning. Check your calendar. Yes, it feels like a Monday after Canada Day yesterday. Current temperature outside our downtown studios at Portage and Spence, 16 degrees, 15 at the airport. Abby Adeyemi will have your full forecast in just a moment. Coming up, how some residents have been describing Selkirk's Main Street lately.
It was really wild. It was wild.
We'll hear how the city's plan to spiff up its main street with natural prairie plants got out of hand and why the city itself is frustrated. We will bring you that story in just a few moments. Of course, we will also be speaking with the Premier as he makes his monthly visit here to Information Radio in about 1 hour's time. But for now, let's go over to our news center and join Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, a couple hundred campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park waiting for word on when they'll be able to leave. All of this as many roads in western Manitoba have been flooded and washed out. In the Swan River area, parts of that city were evacuated yesterday.
We're fairly cut off from the outside world right now until we reestablish some highway access.
It's the area's Reeve Bill Gade. The province has asked the federal government for military help. The twister that tore through the Rossburn area on Sunday was bigger than first thought. Environment and Climate Change Canada now says it's been upgraded to an EF3. The estimated maximum wind speed, 230 kilometers an hour. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells at the CBC News Centre. Abby Adeyemi has been compiling your forecast, and really it depends on where you are, how much more rain you're going to get, are we ever going to see the sun?
For the southern part of the province, just no sunny conditions today. It's really cloudy outside. Today's more like humid and a slim chance of showers in the southern part of the province. But if you look up north, yes, sunshine present there, but the north is going to be seeing more of hazy conditions and localized wildfire smoke present in most of the region, spreading from the Par all the way towards the Churchill area this morning. Here in the Red River Valley region, we're seeing temperatures hover between 15 and close to 17, depending on where you are. Mostly cloudy. Morning temperatures going to be holding steady around there before we get to a high of 21 today. And look out for strong northwest winds. It's going to really get windy at some point, and more clouds will roll in. But the humidity is something the city will have to deal with before we cool off to about 14 later in the day. And across the south, the Pembina Valley region, the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake region, it's a mild morning. We're seeing temperatures 14s to 17s depending on where you are, as conditions track towards daytime highs near 24 degrees. And then if you look in the northern part of the province, as mentioned, the part towards Churchill, we're seeing sunny conditions, but it looks hazy out there due to the wildfire smoke. And morning temperatures really ranging between 6 and 13, climbing to a high near 22 degrees. For south, expect those cloudy conditions to stick around for most of the day. Winnipeg, we're at 16 now, warming to 23 later, but it's going to be humid.
Okay, well, definitely, those of us with curly hair will definitely notice the humidity. That is for sure. Sierra Sanders also has the curly hair as well and has been monitoring your commute this morning.
I have. So far, it's been pretty quiet, Julie. Haven't heard much on the CBC commuter line. So to me, it sounds like things are moving a little bit smoothly according to the folks out on the roads right now. But some closures I want to let folks know about just in case you are heading out there. So obviously, there was a pedestrian hit last night, hit by a vehicle around midnight last night. And that collision has closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips, and also northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame is also impacted there. So police expect these closures will be in place through the morning rush as they tend to that situation and look into that. So you want to be aware of that there. McPhillips, Notre Dame might see some slowdowns there during this morning rush hour. As well, just a traffic alert, closure on Jarvis Avenue. So all westbound lanes of Jarvis Avenue will be closed for street construction until August 7th. So about just over a month of construction there. So only eastbound travel will be permitted. So you want to expect delays and use alternate routes if possible in that area. So keep that in mind there on your drive. As well, we still are seeing quite a bit of road closures in the northwest part of the province, so the Duck Mountain Provincial Park area. So check Manitoba 511 for up-to-date closures and any other situations going on there. Still here on the CBC commuter line. If you do need me or something is popping up on your drive, wherever you are in the province, give me a call. The number's 204-788-3093.
Minutes after 7 o'clock now, and Selkirk's plan to rewild their main street has gotten maybe a little too wild. Last year, the city hired a contractor to plant a mix of native grasses, shrubs, and trees along the main street and the median and the boulevards. The hope was to enhance both the city's biodiversity and its beauty. Now, though, some residents are saying it doesn't exactly look the way they expected. Here is Selkirk resident Sarah Welk McPhail on what the street looked like early last week.
Yeah, it was like really tall, overgrown grass and weeds mixed in with some potentially pretty natural prairie plants. You'd be going to cross the road or like at a stop sign trying to cross Main, and you couldn't see the traffic on the other side of the street. And then like some of the boulevards on the corners of the streets were so tall as well that it was just an impairment in your vision. You couldn't see past the weeds. It was shocking. Like you would literally, just once you kind of drove towards the north end, it looked like they gave up on us over here. But it was really wild. It was wild.
The city of Selkirk expressing its own frustration with the plan's progress. Dwayne Nickel is the Chief Administrative Officer for the city of Selkirk. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Julie.
Describe in a bit of detail what the vision was for this plan to rewild the main street in Selkirk and what the benefits were supposed to be.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, the goal really here is to turn some of the unused green spaces in the city into natural infrastructure. So as we see with the chaotic weather systems all around us this year, we've had our neighboring communities flooded out with precipitation that is unplanned for and unseen. And so for us, we know that we need to adapt to the changing climate, and a big part of that is better management of stormwater. And so the goal here is that we added a number of natural infrastructure features into the redesign of Main Street, a multi-million-dollar project in partnership with the province of Manitoba. Of course, Main Street is a provincial highway. And those places where we had struggling turf grasses, we replaced those with some infrastructure, one to support a more biodiversity, but also plant infrastructure. So the goal really is to make use of the ecological services that a rewilded cityscape can offer. So as I said, the better stormwater management through improved root systems and reduced soil compaction, improved biodiversity, which is better habitat for birds, pollinators, and insects, and our trees. We're spending, thousands of dollars planting new trees, and, diverse micro ecosystems surrounding the tree helps the trees grow in what is really a harsh climate for trees. And in addition to all of that, improved air quality, potential reduced air temperature because of evapotranspiration, and then also a reduced life cycle cost. So by having a rewilded prairie landscape, we don't have to mow, and so there's less reduced need for herbicide and fertilizer. It also means a lot less staff time managing effectively what was decoration. And it's less risky work for staff because a lot of these green spaces are in the middle of a busy street. And so putting staff there is always a risky situation. And so by not having to mow, we don't have to put folks into that space, and less fossil fuel and less energy use.
It all sounds very good. What went wrong?
Well, we entered into a multi-year agreement to manage the space. What's true is that reestablishing a rewilded environment takes many years to do properly. There's some active management that has to happen while you're establishing the plant community, and the contractor got a late start this year.
And in the messaging to community, you talked about how the contractor in charge didn't really follow through on the project. What more can you say on that?
Well, I'd say that we're working with a contractor now. There's a couple of contractors that we use throughout the entire process, and what's left now is just the establishing work for the landscaping, the rewilding project. And so we're working with them now. They've been on site. They're addressing the issues that our citizen Sarah there had spoken about, and returning to the weeding and the reestablishment of the rain gardens that have been installed. So we're working with them. We expressed our frustration, but was more about keeping our citizens informed. We do a really good job here of trying to engage our citizens and let them know this is a change. And so, on top of a change, a little different look to Main Street, to a portion of Main Street, there was also this additional problem of it not being maintained the way it was supposed to. So it was even wilder than it should have been. So we just need to make sure that our citizens understand that we're aware, that we're working on the problem, letting them know what the actual root of the issue is, and then how we're working to address it. So just wanting to be transparent with citizens, let them know that yes, we have staff that are working on other things, and the reason why they're not addressing this issue directly is because of the contract, because of the relationship with the contractor, and the ramifications of interfering in the establishment work. So, but I think at the end of the day, what's important is The contractor is working with us. They're doing the work, and we're addressing the issues that citizens previously experienced.
In the clip, you heard your resident talk about not being able to see over the grass. That's something I've experienced here, even in the city of Winnipeg, is there's some areas that have a little more natural prairie grass on the boulevards. Have you taken steps to address that? Because obviously safety has to be paramount.
It is. And well, first of all, I live in this area. I drive by it multiple times in a day, every day going to work. There is nobody more frustrated than me than watching this the situation unfold. And the particular corner that was spoken about, I have to take multiple times. I live on Queen Avenue, and Queen and Main there's a bit of a blind corner. I take that every day. I would say that the net impact was no different than winter and snow, the boulevards with snow storage. So yeah, you have to drive to conditions and slow down, but the long-term plan is not for that to be the case. And so there were special steps that were taken in the design of the features that we took sight lines into account, and so that will be managed going forward once it's transitioned, once it's handed over to the city. We'll be managing that on an ongoing basis. It was just this one-time blip, this short-term blip that we had to address.
Does this make you rethink rewilding other areas?
No, I think what's important is at the end of the day, we're going to adapt to the changing climate, or we're going to adapt to the changing climate. We can do it now thoughtfully, work through pilot projects such as this, and improve our practices so that we can expand it throughout the city in an appropriate way. Or we can wait until there's crisis and we have 200 millimeters of rain falling in a few small time period, flooding basements and causing extensive damage to our city. So we have to react differently. Premier Canoe, when he was in Selkirk recently, commented on the fact that we have public policy, whether it's the emergency measures response systems in place that are designed for the old climate. This is true for infrastructure systems. We have to be making changes. We have to be adapting to this and planning better. So we will be doing it better going forward for sure, and continuing to work with contractors. The particular plant mixes will change over time as we perfect the right mix of plants, because this is a harsh climate. There's lots of salts and stuff that have to be taken into account as we're planting installing these plant communities. But at the end of the day, our obligation as trustees of the municipal, the community, is to make sure that we're adapting and being better prepared for the weather events that we are seeing around us right now. And in part, that is reintroducing nature into our infrastructure mix. One of the values of natural infrastructure is that it is anti-fragile. As it experiences the stressors, as it grows, it improves in the service that it delivers over time. Whereas gray infrastructure like pipes and pavement, over time they degrade. Right. And so when we plant these things and they grow and they trees grow, they're providing more services over time. They're getting better over time. Whereas this the traditional way of dealing with stormwater, pipes and pavement and ditches and paved ditches and stuff. They provide the maximum service on the day that they're finished. Whereas natural infrastructure, in 30 years, they provide better and better service. So we need to be thinking differently about our infrastructure that we're installing into our communities.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Dwayne Nickel is the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Selkirk. Time now for your look at sports. Paul McGowan is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Julie.
Let's start at the World Cup, another tournament host through to the round of 16.
The United States through yesterday. They beat Bosnia and Herzegovina 2-0, and they earned that clean sheet despite a red card early in the second half. It means that Fuller and Balogun, who scored yesterday for the U.S., will not be available for the round of 16. That is a tomorrow problem, though. The focus last night was on getting through, and Mauricio Pochettino, the Argentinian coach of the U.S. men's national team, was seen after the game singing along to Country Roads, which is the official victory song of the United States. And so Pochettino was asked if this World Cup experience has him feeling just a little bit American.
When that song started to sound in the stadium, it's impossible not to sing because it's an amazing song. That is why we signed for that country or for that federation. It's because we wanted to feel that emotion. One thing is to be involved. I love to be involved and be part of the party, but I am 200% Argentino. Sorry. I'm not going to lie.
There you go. Mauricio Pochettino, just a big John Denver guy at the end of the day. The United States will face Belgium in the round of 16. Belgium overcoming a late 2-0 deficit yesterday to get past Senegal.
Okay, let's talk about Canada, whose own round of 16 match now 2 days away, and I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to wash the outfit that I wore the last time.
That is an interesting question. I mean, I feel you. You got to go with what got you here.
Exactly.
Team Canada continuing to train in Houston, hopefully washing their gear because it is hot. And they're preparing for the biggest game in men's national team history. And part of what Jesse Marsh talked about yesterday was the way the country is getting behind this team, including apparently some high-profile Canadians.
Getting to know Wayne Gretzky as a hockey fan, and that fact that Wayne texts me daily, I'm just like, I have to pinch myself. More than even being in the 16 of the World Cup, I'm like, I got a message from Wayne Gretzky. He's super supportive of the team, and he wants, he's like, look, I don't know enough about football, but do we have a chance? And I'm like, yeah, we have a chance. Like, let's go for it. But you can see the enthusiasm around the country for what's been happening with the team, and we don't want to stop. We want to keep going.
I would love to know, Julie, in July of 2026, who Canadians more identify with, whether it's Wayne Gretzky or whether it might be Jesse Marsh, who, days ago was asked if he had any advice for the U.S. men's national team and said, quote, I don't care. So curious about that. By the way, tonight, the final World Cup game in Toronto will be played, and that's a round of 32 match between Portugal and Croatia.
Of course, lots of other sports going on outside of the World Cup. What did you have your eye on?
It was a busy day in the NHL with the beginning of free agency. Lots of players signing with new teams. The Jets didn't land any huge names, but they do add Mario Ferraro to the back end. Forward Noah Gregor signs as well. And then an interesting ad in net. There have been these rumors, of course, about, will Connor Hellebuck be moved? And in the meantime, with Hellebuck staying put, former Oiler Stuart Skinner is now a Jet. And he was asked if the Hellebuck situation played a part in his decision one way or the other.
To be honest, it wasn't too much of a conversation because we don't know too much. Obviously, there's rumors out there. And as far as my experience, rumors are just rumors until something happens. As of right now, me and Helly are teammates, which is so exciting. I mean, he's the best goalie in the world. So it's a great opportunity for me. And with the thought process of growing my game and just becoming a better goalie, it's extremely exciting.
Exciting for him, and Stuart Skinner would certainly be a very solid backup option if Hellebuck stays. If Hellebuck does get moved, of course, Skinner could start. And the Jets were in need of a goalie yesterday because backup Eric Comrie, the always very energetic Eric Comrie, yesterday chose to sign with San Jose.
Yes, it's definitely going to be something to watch. And as I was chatting with Heather Wells earlier this morning, I guess we have to warm up our pipes to be able to say stew.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. He's one of ours now. So thanks for doing this. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Julie.
Paul McGowan with your CBC Sports. Still to come in the next half hour, as we've been reporting, Manitoba is set to open its first supervised consumption site. And over the last few months, a lot of talks about the safety of those who use it and the community that's in. We will have a conversation with a CBC producer who's been looking into what that research says. Still lots more to come here on Information Radio. Your CBC local news starts now.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 16 degrees. Showers not mentioned in today's forecast, but we will see increasing clouds, bit of a northwest breeze, and a high of 23. About 200 campers are stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. The province says as many as 50 roads have been washed out by this week's flooding, including all roads in and out of that park. A pair of friends and bandmates are waiting to hear when they can leave. Courtney Carmichael and Nikki St. Pierre arrived Sunday for what they hoped would be a 3-night stay. That all changed when the rain started hammering down. Carmichael says they've been told the roads may not be passable for another week.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, you go camping to go off the grid a little bit, but you're just not expecting to have no means of getting out.
The campers say their access to power and drinkable water was restored yesterday after Manitoba Hydro crews helicoptered in to repair a downed line that had been blocking the way out of their yurt area. Parts of Swan River were evacuated because of that rising floodwater. The Reeve of Swan Valley West says this flood has caused much more damage than the flood 3.5 weeks ago. Bill Gates says roads are destroyed, leaving them cut off.
We have a lot of people that can't leave home, can't go anywhere. And even as the valley itself, we're fairly cut off from the outside world right now until we reestablish some highway access. But we don't think we've had any losses of life, people-wise at least. We're fairly confident everybody is safe, but a lot of them are not in a great situation as far as not being able to go home or being home and not being able to leave.
Gates said there isn't anything anyone can do to help until the water goes down and roads open up. The province says warnings to stay off the roads in the parkland could last not days, but weeks. In Dauphin, the hospital had to be evacuated after the Vermilion River spilled its banks early yesterday morning. Premier Wab Kinew says that shows the gravity of the situation.
If you live in the parkland or you live in Western Manitoba, you know that the Dauphin Hospital is a hub. This is one of our major hospitals in the region. So the idea that we had to move patients out of there, I think, just underlines how serious this really is.
Around 60 patients, including a baby, were moved to other hospitals, including in Brandon. That twister that barreled through the Rossburn area on Sunday was even stronger than first thought. Environment and Climate Change Canada now says it has been upgraded from an initial EF2 to an EF3, and the estimated maximum wind speed, 230 kilometers an hour. The twister tore apart a century-old home near Rossburn, heavily damaging the rest of the farmyard. A house across the road also damaged, but no one was hurt. A pedestrian is unstable this morning after being hit by a vehicle around midnight. The collision closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips. Northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame is also impacted, and police expect the closures will be in place through this morning's rush. 8 people died in Manitoba last year in off-road vehicle accidents. New data shows none were wearing helmets or seatbelts if the vehicle was equipped with one. Those who died ranged from 11 to 63 years of age, with the majority of cases involving a vehicle rollover. Marilyn Corshane lost her daughter to an ATV crash 5 years ago, and her daughter was not wearing a helmet when it happened.
For 8 months, I really was in shock, I think, for a long time because I just kind of stayed home. I needed to feel like she was still here, like she was going to come through the doors.
Since her daughter's death, Corshane has been raising awareness about the importance of wearing a helmet when riding an ATV. She set a goal of collecting 1,000 helmets to give to people and is still looking for more donations. The province's PST cut on store-bought food took effect yesterday. Chips, rotisserie chickens, and baked goods are now exempt from the provincial sales tax. The cut applies to food sold at grocery and convenience stores. The NDP government says the change could save the average family $100 a year. Stephanie Sigvaldason is a mother of 4. She says it really doesn't add up to much.
I probably saved $5. Whoopie-doo. I really, honestly, I don't know if that's making a huge difference for regular families like me, to be honest. I'd rather see the gas come down.
The PST cut for prenatal vitamins also went into effect yesterday. Well, a goaltender with playoff pedigree has joined the Winnipeg Jets. Stuart Skinner helped lead the Edmonton Oilers to Stanley Cup final appearances in 2024 and 2025. The 27-year-old has now signed a 2-year, $7.5 million contract with the Winnipeg Jets. He says he joined Winnipeg Jets because he admires their culture and hopes to grow his game under goalie coach Wade Flaherty, and says how much he plays will be determined on how well he plays.
My expectation is to bring my absolute best game day in and day out, grab that consistency and run.
Skinner says rumors about a possible trade involving franchise goalie Connor Hellebuck did not factor into his decision to join the team. For now, he fills an opening created by the departure of backup Eric Comrie, who has signed a 2-year deal with San Jose. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Well, Heather Wells, one area where Stu Skinner's game is strong is the mustache.
Oh,
His mustache game is strong.
That's a decent point. You
Yes.
want to have that in a guy who's if he makes it really big, perhaps he can stop even more.
Yeah, maybe.
A shield.
Yes, like Lanny McDonald. Okay, I'm dating myself. But anyway, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells at the CBC News Center. All right, let's check in with Abby Adiemi, who has been tracking your forecast. And again, still some precipitation in the forecast for some areas.
Well, I'm trying. Those are like, it may or may not even happen because I'm like, okay, I don't see rain in the forecast today. More about cloud cover. That's what we will get today, and humid conditions. Just a very slim chance of spotted showers in some areas. But up north, it's more about this localized smoke that we are noticing and the hazy skies you will notice in the north. Here in the Red River Valley region, 16 degrees, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg right now. Temperatures really going to be holding steady around that 16. We're noticing that winds coming from the northwest, really going to get windy at some point today, but expect more cloudy conditions throughout the day. The sun will struggle to crack through, but you will not see it. You will feel more of the humidity today because the humidity is going to be close to about 25 degrees. That's how it's going to feel. For other regions in the south, we're tracking temperatures between 14s and 17, and most of the regions will crawl close to 25 degrees. Looking at more than towards Port La Prairie, we're seeing 17 degrees and cloudy conditions, also aiming for a humid high of 25. Brandon towards Nipawin, 14, mainly sunny. It's also going to get humid there. You see highs around 23. Dauphin towards the Russell Roblin area, it is 15 and cloudy, highs 21. Gimli 14, cloudy, highs 23. And then we cross over into the north central part of the province, the part of Flin Flon. We're seeing sunny conditions, highs between current temperatures between 12 and 13 degrees. Highs will be around 22. Most of the regions up north we will see sunny conditions, but it's really going to be hazy there with local smoke causing dry conditions for folks in that region. Norway House, mainly sunny, 10, high 21. Thompson and Split Lake, sunny, 8 degrees at this time, high 22. And of course, we're seeing sunshine in the Lane Lake area at 9 degrees, also warming up to 23. Gillam is at 6 degrees right now, sunny conditions, just a slim chance of showers there, highs of 20. While for Tudula Lake, we're seeing 10 degrees, high of 23 today. Churchill, sunny, 9 degrees, and a high of 20. So it's more about the humid, dry south, and then cloudy conditions to go with that. Up north, we're seeing smoky conditions. But for the city, we're expecting windy conditions and a humid high of 23 today. Winnipeg, we're stuck on 16 for now.
Okay, we'll stay stuck at 16. As you heard in the background there, heard the commuter line. That means Sarah Sanders had to leave one studio back to the other one.
Exactly.
And you got an update.
Yeah, I did. I got a call from Jason Carter. So eastbound Wellington Crescent between Montrose and Waterloo, there's a big tree limb in the roadway there, probably due. So maybe kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Some... Well, I don't know, some remnants still of the storm.
Yes. It was very windy yesterday as well.
Exactly. So either remnants from the storm that has kind of gone through Winnipeg or a new fallen tree limb. So that's eastbound Wellington Crescent between Montrose and Waterloo. There's a big tree limb there in the roadway, so you might need to get around that. As well, we are still seeing westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips closed due to that pedestrian that was hit around midnight last night. Winnipeg Police Service are on scene directing traffic there. So again, that's westbound Notre Dame. McPhillips is closed as well. Northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame is also impacted there. So they're expecting that closure to be in place throughout the morning rush. So keep that in mind. But the Winnipeg Police Service is on scene directing traffic. So that should help keep things moving, but be aware of that as well. We have a closure, on Jarvis Avenue. All westbound lanes of Jarvis will be closed for street construction until August 7th. So only eastbound travel is permitted. And so you want to expect delays there and possibly use an alternate route if that is on your daily commute. So a couple things to consider as well. We still are seeing quite a few highway closures there in the northwest part of the province in the Duck Mountain Provincial Park. Head to Manitoba 511 for up-to-date closures and any other situations going on there. Still here on the CBC commuter line, so give me a call if anything is getting in your way, 204-788-3093.
At each point in the school year, which is just wrapped up. September, the holiday break, the end of the year, our house doctor likes to field some questions he's been asked by kids. And now that school is out for summer, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj took some medical questions that came right out of the mouths of babes. Dr. Bhardwaj spoke with CBC's Marcy Marcusa earlier this week.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with a question from a teenager who wants to know, when it comes to urine, why is pee yellow and is all pee yellow?
What a great observation. Yeah. So first of all, urine, if you think about it, it's a waste product of your body. And the yellow color comes from a chemical called urochrome. Euro like urine, chrome meaning color. And urine is yellow because your blood is red. So what makes blood red is a chemical called hemoglobin. When red blood cells get old and they break down, the hemoglobin gets converted into other chemicals by your liver. Those chemicals get filtered out of your body through your kidneys and you pee it out. So remember, it's the liver and kidneys that help to do a lot of the filtering and cleaning of the chemicals in your body. So what some people call detoxifying your body. And they're very effective, our little organs, which is why we don't actually need to do any detox things like so-called cleanses or detox diets. Now, the second part of the question, is all pee yellow? Also a really neat question, because there's other chemicals that get filtered out by your kidneys as well. And some of those chemicals can actually change the color of your urine. So a really common one is if you eat a lot of beets or blackberries or rhubarb, then that can actually give a pinkish or reddish tinge to your urine. Another one is some of the vitamins, B2, for example, can make your pee really, really bright yellow, almost like fluorescent yellow. And there are other medicines that can change your urine all sorts of different colors, like green, bright orange, even blue. So if your pee changes color unexpectedly, like you haven't been eating beets, you haven't been given any medicine by a doctor, it may be a good idea to get checked out, because it could be a clue to something going wrong with your liver or your kidneys or something else in your body.
I grew up Ukrainian, ate a lot of beets. There were a lot of yells from the bathroom. Mom!
Whenever I'm eating beets,
what's going on?
Whenever I'm eating beets, I always make a point of reminding everybody at the table.
Yes.
Remember tomorrow that you ate beets tonight.
Yeah, don't be stressed in the bathroom. All right, let's stay with color. Another question came from someone asking, why do bruises turn different colors?
Excellent question. The answer is also hemoglobin. So remember, a bruise is basically a small leak of blood from the blood vessels out into the tissues under your skin where it's not really supposed to be. And the blood is red because it has hemoglobin in it. And so bruises start out looking red. Right after you get bumped or scraped, your skin's going to look red. And then after a few hours or so, the oxygen in the hemoglobin is used up. And so hemoglobin without oxygen looks more bluish under your skin. So the bruise starts to look first purplish, right? Red plus blue is purple, and then eventually bluish. And then your body starts to clean up those spilled red blood cells, and it breaks down the hemoglobin into a chemical called biliverdin, which is green, and eventually bilirubin, which is yellow. So if you really pay attention, you can tell how old a bruise is. So for the first day or two, it's kind of reddish purple, and then kind of dark purple to blue until, day 3, day 4. And then it kind of turns around day 4, day 7, it turns kind of more greenish, and then finally kind of yellowish by about a week until it fully fades, which is usually around 10 to 14 days. So a bruise isn't just discolored skin. It's actually an observable timeline of your body repairing and cleaning itself up. It's really cool.
Next question is a summer theme. How do bug sprays work?
Yeah, bug sprays are really interesting. You got to think of, first of all, what are we trying to do with bug sprays? We're trying to make it so mosquitoes and ticks don't find us, don't come to us, don't like us. And so first of all, how do mosquitoes find us in the first place? Well, they use a combination of our body heat, our smell, and the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And they also think, like generally colors and shapes and stuff like that. The most common bug spray ingredient, and the one that's been most studied over the years, is called DEET. DEET messes up the odor sensors of the mosquito's antennae to the point where they can still detect carbon dioxide, but they can't really zero in on it so well. So they have a harder time finding you. And there's other bug sprays with different ingredients like picaridin or oil of eucalyptus. Those also confuse the smell receptors. So it's basically harder for the mosquitoes to find you. The nice thing about picaridin and those things is that humans can't smell them as much as we can smell DEET, so it doesn't, mess with us as much. But here's the thing. If you're trying to protect yourself from mosquitoes, then it's better to apply the bug spray right on your skin, because it makes a little vapor barrier close to the skin that lowers the risk of bites, even though the mosquitoes might still buzz around you. But if you want to protect yourself from ticks, then it might actually be better to apply the bug spray to your shoes and socks and the bottom of your pants. Because ticks don't fly or jump, they crawl up from the ground until they reach your uncovered skin. And research shows that spraying repellents on your clothes can lower your risk of tick bites.
Ugh, mosquitoes are so bad in Manitoba this summer. Woo! Finally here, I love this question. It's kind of philosophical. A kid wrote in, when you lose weight, where does it go?
Yes, I wish I could misplace some weight, but it needs to go somewhere. Yeah, you can't just lose it, like I lose my keys. So this is actually a really interesting chemistry lesson. Okay, so when you lose weight, what you're trying to do is burn more energy than you take in. How do we burn energy? Well, that energy is being stored in our body as fat. Okay, and fat is mostly in the form of chemicals called triglycerides. Those molecules are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, if I go all the way back to when I was in Cubs or Scouts, they talked about the fire triangle, which is you burn fuel plus oxygen, it creates energy, and then also it puts out carbon dioxide and water. And that's what we're doing in our body. We're just having a really slow burn. So when we lose weight, we're melting the fat, we're burning the fat, we're turning those triglycerides into energy, which we use to run our bodies, and then we create carbon dioxide and water. So most of the weight that you lose, about like 84% of the weight that you lose, literally leaves your body as breathing out carbon dioxide. And then the rest, about 16%, leaves as water. So when you lose weight, you're breathing out the weight. And then some of it is still water, which is used in all sorts of different chemical processes in your body, including, some of it might end up as pee, which is usually yellow.
Thank you for going full circle in the bod, and thanks for the column.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That is a House Doctor, Raj Bardwaj, in conversation with Marcy Marcusa.
Manitoba may have a reputation for being cold and flat, but our podcast isn't. I'm Marcy Marcusa, the warmest host on the prairies. Even when my podcast, This is Manitoba, is exploring some challenging issues. I'm never flat when it comes to holding our leaders to account. Some of those interviews have been called spicy. If you care about this province, check out This is Manitoba, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
"11 minutes now before 8 o'clock. Let's check your forecast around the province. In the city of Winnipeg, some increasing clouds, especially throughout the morning. The high today of 23, but feeling like 28, so the humidity is going to be a factor. Same forecast for Brandon. Some clouds this morning and high of 23 and humidity of 28. And into Dauphin, now that is an area that has experienced a lot of flooding, and they are not anticipating rain necessarily today, but it's still in the forecast for later on. So cloudy today, high of 21, good chance of more rain tonight and into tomorrow. Flin Flon and the Paw, sunshine, local smoke, and 22 today. In Thompson, sunny, smoky, and 22. Churchill, mainly sunny today. The wind gusting at times up to 40 kilometers an hour, and the high of 20 degrees. Still to come next hour, it is Manitoba Premier Wab Canoe's monthly visit here to Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM. And no doubt we will be talking about his trip as he is heading to the Parkland pretty much right after that interview. So we'll find out the situation from the Premier's perspective. I know he has asked the military for some assistance, and we'll find out what the situation is with that. 10 minutes now before 8 o'clock, and another question and topic that if we have time to ask the Premier about will be this one, and whether you're ready for it, against it, regardless, it's coming. Manitoba's first supervised consumption site is going to open at 366 Henry Avenue gradually this month, with a full opening in August. But the announcement of the opening sparking fierce debate about its potential impact on public safety and on the people who use it. But beyond the politics, the emotion, there's a growing body of actual research on what happens when these facilities open. CBC producer Victoria Patashnik is here after producing a piece that focuses on that research, and Victoria joins us now in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Julie.
Can you tell us a bit about what the research says about who uses these sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So according to Health Canada client data, so that is data that has been collected from folks who use supervised consumption sites across the country from 2020 to 2025, users are most likely to be male, between 30 and 39 years old, and the drug they're most likely to be consuming is fentanyl. For this story, I spoke with Dr. Thomas Kerr, and he is the head of social medicine in the Department of Medicine at the University of British Columbia. And he led the evaluation of Insight, which is Canada's first supervised injecting site down in Vancouver's downtown east side, and many others. And here's who he says is using supervised consumption sites based on his career doing this kind of work.
But again, all the evidence shows that people who use drugs are not really willing to travel great distances to use these facilities. And so there hasn't really been an observation of a huge, what we call honeypot effect when these facilities are implemented, whereby they open and suddenly there's huge congregations of people hanging out around these facilities. It just hasn't seemed to work that way. And these facilities have been shown over and over again to attract a subpopulation of people who use drugs. Tends to be the people who are most vulnerable and marginalized. They tend to more often be homeless. So again, what you're doing is you're implementing a facility that's attracting people who spend most of their time outdoors. That's where they consume their drugs.
And obviously, there's a lot of emotions when you're talking about a situation like this, especially the debate around the location and opening up the site in Winnipeg. So tell us about the research you looked into about what happens when a supervised consumption site opens in a neighborhood.
Yeah. So, Julie, we started with the research about crime specifically. So the first study we came across was a study conducted by researchers at McGill University, and it was published in January. And this study looked at incidents of crime within a 400-meter radius. It's about a quarter mile of 9 different sites in Toronto from 2014 to 2025. And the researchers used Toronto police data and looked specifically at 7 types of crime. And that was assault, auto theft, break-and-enters, robbery, theft over $5,000, bike theft, and theft from motor vehicles. And when they looked at that data, what they found was the opening of those supervised consumption sites in Toronto, for the most part, had no effect or even a positive effect on crime in some of those areas. Now, another research study I looked at, similar, but this one in a different city. So this one was in Vancouver, and it was focusing on, as I mentioned previously, Canada's first supervised consumption site in Vancouver. And it, too, used Vancouver police data to examine crime rates in the neighborhood where the site is located in the year before the consumption site opened versus the year after it opened. And what the researchers found there was that there were no increases that were seen with respect to drug trafficking, assaults, or robbery. And there was actually a significant decline in vehicle thefts. And then another area that we wanted to look into was an interesting study I saw out of New York City. So this one was published in the American Journal of Epidemiology in March. And that study explored the association of the opening of the first 2 supervised consumption sites in New York City with neighborhood residential rents and real estate sales in the East Harlem and Washington Heights neighborhoods. The end result, and I'll quote here, is, "Overall, we found no changes in neighborhood rental or sales prices. Now, I do want to note here, Julie, I think it's important to say in this piece, we're not suggesting that these exact results are going to be replicated here in Manitoba. Winnipeg's not Vancouver, Toronto, or New York City. But we thought it was of value regardless of the specificity of the city to look at what happened there with the data.
So if the research shows the impact to a neighborhood isn't terrible, if you will, where does the outrage then come from?
Yeah, good question. So we spoke with a few psychologists and psychology professors, researchers, who have specifically studied the perception and psychology associated with supervised consumption sites. And there seems to be a consensus there that there's almost a branding problem, if you will, or a communications problem with supervised consumption sites. And what I mean when I say that is the folks who are organizing and running these sites aren't always necessarily the best to be at communicating the research around this and the hard facts, or that's just not their job. Their job is to organize and open the site, right? So there seems to be a consensus that if more folks were aware of this research, that perhaps that could change the perception around them. A really interesting study I came across that a researcher spoke to me about said that the overall perception of what these sites do could be viewed more positively if the name was changed to something like overdose reversal site. So something that is really specific about reversing overdoses, the life-saving measures, and highlights the health aspect of the site. A psychology professor I spoke with at UBC, Zachary Walsh, said that the visibility of addicts just brings up emotions we'd rather not deal with on a day-to-day basis. And here's what he had to say about that.
To the shame and guilt that many of us feel when we see this social, because it's so embedded in disparities and social inequalities that many of us would rather not, especially those of us who are doing reasonably well, we don't want to look at it. So,
fascinating research. We know that the site opened briefly here in Winnipeg for one day, again, multiple days in July, and then a full opening in August. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Julie.
The CBC's Victoria Patashnik reporting live in our studio. Still to come next hour, the Premier will be joining us. He will be talking about the flood situation in the Parkland region. So that is something we'll talk about, and we'll continue to track that story. He will join us again after we have the World Report, also traffic and weather as well. Thank you for being here. We will continue to bring you the very latest here on Information Radio. Don't go anywhere. The World This Hour. The World Report is next.
On cue.
I love being Inuk. I love being from Nunavut. I'm so proud to tell this story.
The actor Anna Lamb from the show North of North was in school for international development in Ottawa. She wanted to make a difference in the world, in particular where she's from, in the North. But the roles kept coming, and she'll tell you how she learned that acting is actually one of the most powerful ways to make change. Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Pia Chattopadhyay. People are taking up sewing, making their own clothes, and taking pride in saying, thanks, I made it myself. We'll look at the trend and the pushback against fast fashion and overconsumption. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Alberta is expected to present a new pipeline proposal this morning. Premier Daniel Smith will unveil plans to ship 1 million barrels of oil a day to the BC coast. The project is backed by Ottawa, but it faces resistance from some First Nations over a lack of consultation. As the CBC's Natasha Reeb reports, it comes at a politically charged time between Ottawa and Alberta.
Looks like, at least from the outside, that the two-level governments are working together.
Ryan McKinnell is a political science professor at Edmonton's MacEwan University.
certainly the Prime Minister was more or less framing it as a national unity issue.
McKinnell says a pipeline deal might help quell separation sentiment in Alberta. Today, Premier Daniel Smith is set to lay out plans for the pipeline, meant to deliver 1 million barrels of oil a day to the BC coast. Some First Nations say both governments are touting only the economic gains and leaving out the environmental impacts.
We are dealing with governments that are addicted to oil.
Jesse Cardinal with Keepers of the Water and a member of the Kikino Métis settlement says the majority of First Nations in Alberta are not included in talks.
Consultation and consent need to go hand in hand. We can't just be putting consultation in a checkbox.
Also expected to be revealed today, will private oil and gas companies be on board with Alberta's pipeline proposal? Prime Minister Mark Carney has said the government will decide by October 1st whether the project is in the national interest, a few weeks before Albertans vote in a referendum on the separation question. Natasha Reeb, CBC News, Edmonton.
The East Coast is experiencing the same weather system that brought the heat wave to parts of Ontario and Quebec. Environment Canada has expanded its heat warnings across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI. The dangerous system is still punishing central Canada. Montreal is tracking a high of 33 degrees with a humidex pushing 45. And that same unstable weather triggered severe thunderstorms. Tens of thousands of customers are without power this morning. Strong winds and heavy rain forced the cancellation of several Canada Day celebrations, including the main fireworks on Parliament Hill. Environment Canada says roughly 110 millimeters of rain fell at the Ottawa airport. A flight carrying Prime Minister Mark Carney was grounded. He missed a speaking event in Edmonton. Emergency services in Pemberton, BC are on alert. They're monitoring water levels for a glacial lake outburst. The Place Glacier started overflowing on Tuesday. The floodwaters could peak today. The CBC's Caroline Bargout reports communities downstream are getting ready for a surge.
We've done everything we can do, so it's just a matter of waiting.
For weeks, Don Coggins and his neighbors have been on edge, told a nearby glacial lake will burst, sending as much as 30 meters of floodwaters their way. That rupture has now started.
It is a relief. Now it's started. At least we can deal with whatever comes our way instead of just sitting here and waiting.
24 properties northeast of Pemberton, BC are on evacuation orders, including Coggins. He set up flood bladders around his home, which are similar to sandbags, and is planning to stay put to make sure he can protect his property.
When it lets go completely, then it will be a flood, no matter what we do. Just a question of how deep it's going to get, that's all.
Brian Menounis is a geography professor at the University of Northern British Columbia.
In a similar way to previous floods and floods in other areas of the world, they start slowly. And as the channel beneath the glacier starts to get larger, it can accommodate more water. It's really in the best interest to keep everyone safe. And I think that's really what authorities are trying to do here.
The glacial lake has burst twice before in 2024 and 2025. No homes were flooded. An embankment was strengthened this year to keep floodwaters in Pool Creek.
Nobody knows what to expect.
Don Coggins fears that will only divert floodwaters his way. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Vancouver.
At least 20 people are dead after overnight strikes on Ukraine's capital. Paramedics lift a man onto a stretcher outside a residential building in Kyiv. It has partially collapsed and people are believed to be trapped inside. It is one of more than 20 sites hit by Russian drone and missile strikes. Ukraine's president says more than 90 people have been injured. This man lives in Kyiv.
It was terrible. We were at home when reports came in that the ballistic missiles were heading towards the city, so we rushed into the hallway to get to the shelter. But it was already too late. There was one strike, then another, then the blast blew our front door out. My wife and I grabbed our cat and dog and went outside to see what had happened.
Fires could be seen burning across Ukraine's capital. Officials say the number of dead will likely rise. Nearly 2,300 people are now confirmed dead after the twin earthquakes in Venezuela. Doctors are warning of a growing medical crisis for survivors. Thousands of people are living in crowded shelters. Many have untreated wounds and no clean water. CBC's Jorge Barrera is in La Guaira with more.
A priest gives last rites, standing atop the shattered remains of 9 apartment towers in a neighborhood in the eastern part of the state of La Guaira, emerging as the hardest hit area in Venezuela following last week's twin earthquakes. This looks like a war zone, says Sabrina Carazo, who survived along with her mother. Her 4 brothers and grandmother remain buried. She says 2,700 people lived here, and a little over 100 bodies have so far been dug out. The total killed, unknown. Canopies dot this undulating landscape where local residents, with little help from authorities, have dug their own tunnels to retrieve their loved ones.
Where's maybe the child?
This translator directs a search and rescue team from the Netherlands for a father whose 2 sons, aged 8 and 13, died in their bedroom.
Yes? Okay. About a few hours. We help
As the team gets to work, frustration swirls around them.
El pueblo, le digo todo el pueblo, rebélense.
The people need to rebel, says Armando Urbina. Only the connected and the wealthy are getting any government help. Not so, says Prison Minister Julio Garcia Zerpa, charged with overseeing a large tent city for the displaced. This tragedy outstrips the capacity of any state to respond, he says. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, La Guaira, Venezuela.
The Vatican has formally excommunicated a breakaway Catholic group after it defied Pope Leo. The Traditionalist Society of St. Pius X went against the pontiff and ordained new bishops without his approval. The church's decision goes further than expected and marks the first major confrontation of Pope Leo's papacy. Megan Williams has the details from Rome.
The Vatican isn't just punishing the bishops who took part. It says the entire Society of St. Pius X, known as the SSPX, is now in schism, a severe rupture. That means its priests and formal followers are considered cut off from the wider Catholic Church and excommunicated. The move comes after the Swiss-based ultra-traditionalist society consecrated 4 new bishops this week without Pope Leo's approval. Pope Francis had been severe with traditionalists, especially over the Old Latin Mass.
Some people have hoped that Leo would undo some of that. It might be easier for him to do that now that he's been tough on the SSPX.
Says Vatican observer Francis X. Rocca. Under church law, only the Pope can authorize new bishops because bishops are seen as successors to Jesus' apostles. The Vatican says SSPX priests now celebrate the sacraments illicitly and cannot validly officiate marriages or hear confessions. The group has long rejected key reforms of the 1960s Second Vatican Council, particularly reforms that opened the door to Mass in local languages and improved ties with Jews and other Christian denominations. The SSPX says it needed new bishops to keep leading its worldwide movement. For now, Leo is drawing a hard line. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
There are preparations at Madison Square Garden for what reports say is a massive wedding for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
I heard you calling on the megaphone. You want to see me all alone.
The spectacle has some New Yorkers anticipating traffic. Swifties are thrilled. Others are raising eyebrows over the choice of a public arena.
1,000% excitement. She's never an inconvenience. Taylor can do whatever she wants. I think congratulations to them. I hope they're very happy. I just have a lot of questions for their marketing teams.
More than 1,000 guests are expected at the ceremony on Friday. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning to you. I'm Julie Buckingham. In for Marcy Marcusa today. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. Of course, on the app and on YouTube. This is Thursday morning, and it is 16 degrees outside our studios here at Portage and Spence. Abby will bring us the full forecast in just a moment. Well, still to come as tornadoes, wildfires, and floods wreak havoc on our province. Of course, CUSMA talks The Premier will join us normally in studio, but as a result of that flooding, on the phone as he makes his way to the Parkland. That interview just ahead. So stay tuned for all of that as Information Radio wraps up its last half hour. Let's head to the news center now and check in with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, about 200 campers stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park are waiting to find out when they can go home. We're going to hear from a couple of them. Parts of Swan River had to be evacuated yesterday because of that rising floodwater. The area's Reeve Bill Gates says you can't get in or out.
We're fairly cut off from the outside world right now until we reestablish some highway access.
In Dauphin, the hospital was evacuated after the Vermilion River spilled its banks. Around 60 patients have been moved to other hospitals, including Brandon, and the province is asking the federal government for military help. The twister that tore through the Rossburn area on Sunday was stronger than anyone first guessed. Environment and Climate Change Canada now says it has been upgraded to an EF3, the estimated maximum wind speed, 230 kilometers an hour. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, we'll be ready. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells at your CBC News Centre. Abby Adeyemi has been tracking the forecast and gives us a snapshot of what you're experiencing no matter where you are in this beautiful province.
Yeah, no matter where you are, we're seeing cloudy skies in the southern part of the province and tracking rain in the Dauphin and Brandon area, but that should be sweeping in like probably around 8 or 9 o'clock later tonight. Up north, we're seeing sunny conditions. In the city right now, we're more about this cloud cover we have in the city. Our highs will get to 23 today, but the humidex is around 28, so expect a humid day. Current temperatures really hovering between 15 and 16 at the Forks and at the airport under mostly cloudy skies, and that's what we're seeing across the southern regions, 15s to 17s. But up north, we're seeing more like bright sunny conditions there, and we are dealing with smoky conditions. Temperatures ranging from 9 to 14. Daytime highs gets to 22 today. Winnipeg, 16, mostly cloudy, high 23.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders is back, our show's director, and has also been taking your calls on the commuter line.
Yeah, I have, Julie. I just wanted to note, I know we've been talking about westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips as police were dealing with a situation there as a pedestrian was hit last night around midnight. And just a note, so the westbound curb lane at westbound Notre Dame and McPhillips, that curb lane has been opened for traffic there. So the westbound, you want to keep right to pass there, but the westbound middle and curb lanes remain closed. So you can start sneaking in through there, but it might come with some delays there. So you want to be aware of that as well. I just want to remind folks or let folks know about a closure on Jarvis Avenue. So all westbound lanes of Jarvis will be closed for street construction until August 7th. So just over a month there of some construction work. So, and only eastbound travel is permitted there. So you want to expect delays and use alternate routes there if possible because of that situation. So something to keep in mind there if that's on your regular daily commute. As well, reminder, as we were hearing Heather mention that in the Duck Mountain Provincial Park area, there are multitudes of highway closures there. It honestly probably take me less time to list all the highways that aren't closed because the list is quite long. So you want to make sure if you are possibly heading up towards that area or are getting out on the highways in that area, check Manitoba 511 for all up-to-date information on closures and situations going on there. Still a little bit of time left in the show, though, so if there's something that's popping up on your commute, wherever you are in the province, I'd love to hear about it. Give me a call on that CBC commuter line. The number's 204-788-3093.
15 minutes now after 8 o'clock. I'm Julie Buckingham in for Marcy Marcusa today. Manitoba's Premier, Wab Kinew, is back for our monthly interview. Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Normally, you'd be in studio. And as a result of the situations that we're seeing in Manitoba, you are heading out. There's been massive flooding in the Parkland again, wildfires up north, an EF3 tornado in Rossburn, even tornado damage right in the city of Winnipeg. So let's start where you're headed on a plane shortly after this interview. What is the situation as you know it in the Parkland?
Well, we're still asking people to avoid travel in the region and to stay off the roads. we have seen an unprecedented amount of water. Heather ran through some of the important bulletins in the news there, but just to, I guess, cover some ground so everyone's on the same page. We've had to evacuate the Dauphin Hospital, so move patients out as a result of water impacts. So we're going to be heading to Dauphin both to look at the hospital, at the temporary urgent care center that's been set up across the street, and also to be able to head to Swan River after that, where they're still dealing with a ton of water. Some people were evacuated within town from the very impacted areas, from floodwater to safer areas within Swan River. But again, Swan River, the town, is cut off in all directions by road access. And then you have just some devastating scenes of impacts to highways and bridges washed out. You've got communities like Gilbert Plains, which, the golf course is flooded, businesses are impacted, all sorts of structures are damaged. So we are going to be on the ground to assess, to talk to local leadership, to make sure that the right resources and supplies are getting where they need to go. And then, of course, to talk about the next steps of cleanup and restoration, while also keeping an eye on where this water is going to head downstream in the coming days and weeks.
Have you been in touch with the Prime Minister about the situation? And if so, what has been his reaction and offers of help, if any?
Yeah, the federal minister, actually. So Minister Olszewski is in charge of the emergency measures at the federal level. She's great to work with, always very positive and collaborative. And we put out the call for additional assistance from the federal level yesterday. One, because of the scale and our need to get additional resources like big water pumps and a huge quantity of sandbags into some of these hard-hit areas like Swan River in particular. So asking the feds to get some aircraft that they have at their disposal mobilized. But also, when you think about our resources at the provincial level, just to give you one example, when you're talking about the campers in the park there, we have folks from the Manitoba Wildfire Service who've been pulled away on some supposed to be time off from fighting wildfires to go and check on those folks. You have conservation officers doing the same thing in the middle of their duties. You have highways officials and frontline MTI, transportation and infrastructure staff, who've been dealing with flood-impacted highways since the last major rain event on June 8th, nearly a month ago. So the point I'm making here is whether you're talking about municipal or provincial officials or even just volunteers, people are tired. And as the cleanup operation begins in the coming days, the federal government being able to bring in some human resources to help people catch their breath, to be able to take a shift off, if you will, that's the sort of assistance that we're planning for. We're planning ahead for now.
You've asked for the Canadian military to provide some help. Has that been promised now? When could we expect to see some sort of Canadian military presence on the ground?
Yeah, so we have requested the military. The federal government also works with a group called Team Rubicon, who are retired military and first responders, so retired law enforcement, retired firefighters. And they help on the humanitarian side, so getting food, water, potentially helping out with rescue if there's medical emergencies, but also just that human resource side that I was talking about of helping somebody who's been sandbagging or somebody who's been setting up water pumps to be able to get some rest. So the federal government, I guess, they have their process. They will be looking at all of that, and I think in the coming days, we'll hear the details of the type of response they'll be sending out to the Parkland region of Manitoba.
Have you had positive response, though, from the military? Do you expect it to be forthcoming, or is it still sort of a wait-and-see approach?
Well, the feds have been positive, and, they've got their process that they go through, and so we'll see what resources they deploy. We have requested the military, though.
When it comes to disaster financial assistance, I think this has been I'm going to say unprecedented. It certainly feels like that from where I sit, and I'm sure where you do as well. That we've had so many of these natural disasters in a variety of areas in the province, and now a second time for the Parkland. As I was talking to Bill Gade this morning, again inside of 3 weeks. So when it comes to that assistance for people, and now a tornado in the city of Winnipeg that I don't think anyone expected either. When will we know if it's changing, expanding in order to help a lot of Manitobans who are really dealing with a lot right now?
It sure is a lot. And, my heart goes out to everyone impacted, which is why we've already made the announcement that this DFA response is going to look different. It's going to be broader. It's going to be more inclusive. And as part of this most recent rain and overland flooding situation that we're seeing in the Parkland, we've announced that there's going to be $5 million available immediately to municipalities. And, this is an advance towards the DFA costs that you're talking about, which, as you know, they typically are a reimbursement that comes later. So potentially weeks or months after the disaster, you see the disaster financial assistance come back to reimburse municipalities for costs. In this situation, though, as you heard from Bill Gade and from others, so many of the municipal infrastructure assets, like roads, like bridges, have been damaged and are leaving many people cut off. We've made the statement that people, as a result, should stay home unless there's a medical emergency, in which case call 911 or your local emergency service. So the $5 million that we're putting out the door as a DFA cash flow level of help is to ensure that municipalities can get their infrastructure back online. Our provincial transportation and infrastructure folks are going to have their hands full in the coming weeks. And we are talking about weeks here. These repairs aren't going to be a number of days when we're talking about major highways, bridges washed out, in some cases cut to relieve the pressure of floodwaters. So we're going to have the provincial officials and highways folks working around the clock, and we're bringing the financial resources to ensure that cash flow and any question around dollars is not going to get in the way of municipalities. In fact, we're going to work with them to make sure that municipalities have everything that they need to get their infrastructure back online so that we can get folks in the Parkland region onto a conversation about cleanup, restoration, and how do we prepare for impacts like this in the future.
The scope is immense. We are talking about 30 areas which have declared local states of emergency. You've referenced the number of highways and road closures, and even if they look safe in the Parkland, they may not be structurally sound. And then we look at, the Bois of Ain area, so many areas that are dealing with a lot of infrastructure issues. Do we have the scale and the scope and the resources, be they provincial or private, to get these roads and highways, numbering in many hundreds of kilometers, I'm sure? Do we have the resources here, or will we have to bring them in from out of province to get these roads back functional again?
Yeah, we do. It's going to be a question of time, so this is going to be about making sure that we have a good plan and all of the necessary resources moved out. In some of these regions, there's going to be some very granular, excuse the pun, conversations about material and where do we source that to do some of these repairs. But also, I think, we're going to need to have some conversations about how do we have infrastructure that can better help Manitobans withstand a situation like this in the future. I'll give you two quick examples. So the community of Minitonas, as your listeners will remember, had a 1 in 10,000 flooding event at the start of June. So that was supposed to be something that happens, on the scale of once every ice age. Well, here we are again a month later, and it's happened again. So the conversation there has already started around how do we get emergency backup generators into town so that if they do lose hydro as a result of overland flooding again, that at least the wastewater infrastructure will be kept online, preventing other challenges. So that's one example of how we would respond and make communities more resilient for natural disasters. A second one will be that cut that we made on Highway 10 just east of town. So when we were there, Swan River to be clear, when we were there not even a month ago, folks were saying, we've never seen this little creek next to the highway, anything like this. All of a sudden, this tiny creek has turned into a roaring river. So now, twice in a month, we're looking at high water levels in the area. We need to be thinking about that Highway 10, not just as a highway, but potentially looking at culverts and, water structures to allow a situation like this where we can relieve the pressure of floodwaters in the future. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, Julie. But the point is, yes, we have the best of the best when we're talking about the engineers, and they're going to have an additional ask of them, which is not just to build it back, but to make it more resilient to help Manitobans in the future.
We know we have a lot of great researchers at our many academic facilities here in Manitoba that will no doubt look at this and perhaps it will change the way construction is done in the future. Had a chance to chat with Bill Gade this morning, and something I asked him, I'll put to you, and we're not called Friendly Manitoba for nothing. A lot of us grew up in rural parts of this province, and when things happen, people pull together, and we're certainly seeing that for sure. But a lot of us now, if you live in the city of Winnipeg, feel a little helpless because you see your friends, your neighbors, and maybe family members dealing with this. And I said to him, what can people do? And he said, at the moment, nothing. But is there a mechanism where perhaps at some point there could be a way for people to donate, to provide relief to their friends and neighbors? Because money obviously is sort of what makes the world go round in situations like this.
Yeah, I think that helping spirit is on full display, even on the hardest hit Manitobans in this situation. When I was in Minitonas and Stony Mountain and Stonewall and Swan a few weeks back, it really stood out to me that even as you're talking to somebody who's clearing out a flooded basement, they'll tell you, I think somebody's got it worse than me, and we're just trying to do our part. So that's always very, very heartwarming and very, very impressive. So I would just, first of all, we all celebrated Canada Day yesterday. Everywhere that I went, I asked Winnipeggers and folks in West St. Paul and everywhere to send some love, some support to our folks. I think what Mr. Gade is saying is right now the type of support that we can offer is a lot of moral support. Certainly at the provincial level, we're bringing forward the financial support on your behalf, as I'm saying. You've got a lot of great organizations like the Manitoba Métis Federation. I can tell you is everywhere in the parkland. They're bringing forward a lot of that help with food and water and medications to folks that they know. And I'm sure in the coming days that there will be many more opportunities to help communities like Grandview, Gilbert, Dauphin, Swan, Deloraine, etc., Boissevain, Roblin, because we know that the need is going to be great. So I would say, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for help. Maybe the best way to help right now is just to check in on your friends and relatives, make sure that they're safe and staying off the roads. And of course, in the coming days, I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities for Manitobans giving spirit and generosity to be exercised.
Premier Canoe, thank you for spending a few moments before getting on that plane to the Parkland. Appreciate it.
Yeah, real pleasure, and have a great day.
Manitoba's Premier Wab Kinew joining us for the monthly chat. No doubt there will be more topics covered in next month's chat as a result of the flooding. We had to really cover that topic for so many Manitobans who are wondering about their future, perhaps when they'll get out of a park, as they're currently encircled by roads that aren't safe for them to travel on, and so much more. On Radio Noon today, are you someone who lives in the parkland or been affected by the extreme weather so far this summer? Radio Noon wants to hear your story. Or if you have a message like we've been talking about for your fellow Manitobans, leave a message on Radio Noon's listener line at 204-788-3797. That's what they'll be talking about on today's show, and they want to hear from you. CBC News starts now.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is 16 degrees. We're climbing to a breezy 23 with increasing clouds. No mention of rain today, but showers do return to our forecast tomorrow. About 200 campers stranded in Duck Mountain Provincial Park are waiting to find out when they can go home. Courtney Carmichael and Nikki St. Pierre arrived Sunday for what they hoped would be a 3-night stay at Childs Lake Campground. Those plans were washed out when the rain started hammering down Monday night. They don't think any of their fellow campers have been able to find a way out either.
People around us have tried with trucks and side-by-sides to access back roads, and almost everybody we've spoken to have had to turn around.
There are only four entrances and exits in and out of the park, and they've all been destroyed.
Now, the province says it is working to restore power and road access to those people stranded in the park in Duck Mountain. As you heard the Premier say, dozens of provincial roads have been flooded or washed out. The province urging people in the parkland to stay off all roads. And even if the roads appear to be safe, Premier Wab Kinew says that's not always the case.
We have seen many situations with vehicles just submerged in water and mud and all sorts of other impacts to infrastructure. So it's really about looking after people so that you can stay safe.
The Reeve of Swan Valley West says this flood has caused much more damage than the flood 3.5 weeks ago. Bill Gates says roads are destroyed, leaving them cut off.
It took us 3 or 4 days to get access back to every home. We're expecting it'll be at least that long, if not longer this time. But we're getting kind of good at this, I guess. We know how we did it last time, so we just have to repeat it again.
And that last time was only 3 weeks ago. The province has asked the federal government for military assistance to help with the response. More than 30 municipalities have issued states of emergency. A pedestrian is in unstable condition this morning after being hit by a vehicle around midnight. The collision has closed westbound Notre Dame at McPhillips. Northbound McPhillips at Notre Dame is also impacted. Police expect those closures will be in place for the next little while. Growing calls for off-road vehicle users to take safety seriously after new data shows 8 people died in Manitoba riding off-road vehicles last year. None of those who died had been wearing helmets or used a seatbelt if the vehicle was equipped with one. Dave Lee, president of the All-Terrain Vehicle Association of Manitoba, says young riders are particularly vulnerable in a collision.
It's a tragedy. It'll devastate a family if this happens. I've heard so many stories of tragedy strikes and the family is devastated. The family breaks down. Please protect your children.
Lee recommends all riders take a safety course. Manitoba had more than 200 hospitalizations last year for injuries from people riding off-road vehicles. The province's PST cut on store-bought food took effect yesterday. Chips, rotisserie chickens, and baked goods all are now exempt from the provincial sales tax. This tax cut also applies to food sold at grocery and convenience stores. The NDP government says the change could save an average family $100 a year. Stephanie Sigvaldason is a mother of 4 and doesn't think it adds up to much.
I probably saved $5. Whoopie-doo. I really, honestly, I don't know if that's making a huge difference for regular families like me, to be honest. I'd rather see the gas come down.
The PST cut for prenatal vitamins also went into effect yesterday. Well, the Winnipeg Jets' newest goalie says he didn't come here to replace Connor Hellebuck. Stuart Skinner signed a 2-year, $7.5 million contract with the Jets yesterday. He admits he has heard the trade talks swirling around Winnipeg's franchise goalie. But until something happens, he says it's all just rumors.
As of right now, me and Helly are teammates, which is so exciting. I mean, he's the best goalie in the world. So it's a great opportunity for me. And I think, again, with the thought process of growing my game and just becoming a better goalie.
Skinner is best known for helping lead the Edmonton Oilers to Stanley Cup Finals in 2024 and 2025. He fills the hole left by the departure of backup goalie Eric Comrie, who signed with San Jose yesterday. You can find more news and the latest on the flood situation in western Manitoba and the Parkland region on our website throughout the day. day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Always a delight to hear your voice. Thank you, Heather.
Yours too, thanks.
Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk this morning. All right, Sierra Sanders is back in studio. That must mean another check on our traffic.
Yeah, one last check on your traffic this morning, Julie. As we've been talking about throughout the morning, westbound Notre Dame and McPhillips emergency crews were there as they tended to a situation as a pedestrian was hit late last night / early this morning. So westbound Notre Dame and McPhillips, that westbound curb lane has been opened for traffic. So you want to keep right to pass there, but the westbound middle and curb lanes remain closed. So you want to use caution and expect delays there. As well, just a reminder about a closure on Jarvis Avenue. So all westbound lanes of Jarvis will be closed for street construction till August 7th. There's about a month of construction. So only eastbound travel is permitted, and expect delays and use alternate routes there. As well, just a reminder, in that northwest part of the province, in the Parkland region, that Duck Lake Provincial Park, you want to keep an eye out for closures there and head to Manitoba 511 if you are in the area or looking to head out on the highways there in the area. So check there for up-to-date closures and any updates on situations there.
All right, thanks, Sierra. Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, we are tracking humid conditions in the south and hazy skies in the north following, the confirmation of last Sunday's tornado near Roseburn. For the south, we're seeing temperatures around 17 degrees, warming to 25, while for Winnipeg, we are looking at 16 at this time, heading to 23. But in the north, we have smoke impacting that region at this time.
Thank you to everyone this morning for being here. Associate producers Emily and Sophia Peralta Barone. Producer Victoria Potashnik. In the news department, Alana Cole, James Turner, Heather Wells. Our show crew, Darren Morash, Abby Adiemi, Sierra Sanders, Corey Funk is the show producer of the current affairs this week. I'm Julie Buckingham. Be well.